Hi. Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? I'm sorry, I've discovered that. So, if anyone doesn't know, this is my new model. I made it. It's cute. And unfortunately, it makes me feel very, very silly while I'm using it. So I am feeling a little silly right now, which maybe isn't the right mood for reading academic papers. Hey Warpy, hello Astral, hello Ilgaz, welcome to the stream. So happy to have you here, happy to have you. Today, we are reading a paper somewhat inspired by something that Eggy said. It is true, I am always silly. I always find, hey, maybe I just have good timing. Or maybe it's because I have like more regularly scheduled streams these days. And therefore, like, you know, it's like you just happen to be at this on YouTube or whatever at the time when I start streaming or something. Hello Arctelos, hello, how you doing? Hey Dark, I'm looking more Adventure Time than usual. Yeah, hey Kingwin, welcome. Yeah, this is my new model. I wanted to have like a cute little model as well to match like the models that I've made for some of my friends and for some people who've commissioned me. So like for example, when I collab with Sidere, when I collab with Sai, I don't look as weird being like a full anime person when Sai is using her Adventure Time model. I figured this would fit together a bit better. Jackalope, yes! Yes, Dorg, you got it in one. I am a jackalope. In fact, I got a little jackalope. One second. Let me make YouTube or VTube Studio bigger so I can show you. YouTube just announced you in the middle of my Spanish dialogue. Oh no. Hey QB! Hey, how you doing? So yeah, this is my new outfit. I got the bunny feet. Well, I guess jackalopes are hares, so I guess the hare feet. And I got the ears, I got my horns, I got my shirt with a jackalope on it. Yeah. Yeah, life is good right now. Life is very good. I am just a little guy. Even more so than usual. I am just a little guy today. The teeth, yeah. I got bunny teeth and everything. It only felt appropriate. If I was going to be a jackalope, I had to have the bunny teeth. Life is good, and I feel very cute and very gremlin-y. Jackrabbits are hares? Everything is a lie. I believe jackrabbits are hares. Jackrabbit, also known as the American desert hare. Or the black-tailed jackrabbit, also known as the American desert hare. I believe jackrabbits are hares. I believe. That's my general understanding anyway. I'm not that kind of scientist, so it's hard to say for sure. But yes, which means that they're kind of scary. They're a little spooky. Hares are a little spooky in my experience. But jackalopes are very cute. Oh, I have something, the real question, how are you coping with corpophagia? Is that, coprophagia? Is that what I think it is? Oh, I'm not coping with it. I'm miserable every second of every day. Luckily, I don't actually need to eat. You see, I am a mythical creature, and therefore I don't actually need to eat anything, and therefore I've simply decided not to eat, or to eat things that are not actually nutritional for jackrabbits or normal hares, so I can, like, eat pizza, and I can get nutrition from it, because I don't actually need to acquire nutrition the way normal animals would. Supposed to have spring break, but my professors didn't get the memo, so I'm going to have to catch you on replay. Oh, I'm sorry, QB Investigates. Take care. I think that's a good thing. I hope so. Hey, CDM, how you doing? Hey, Xplotch. Yeah, Jackalope Mylan, the time has come. Yes, thank you. So now that I've got y'all here, I do, before we get reading, I do have a question to ask all of you. That will influence perhaps some future events on this channel that I'm very excited about. So you may or may not know that I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and at that conference, I overcame my social anxiety And I gave several researchers who were doing some really cool, fun, interesting work, which frankly, it was my bias. It's work that I personally found fun and cool and interesting. I gave them a business card. I gave them a Mylan business card. And I talked with them about potentially coming on the channel and like talking to all of you either as a live stream or like as a video or whatever. And I finally got around to following up on one of those business cards that I gave out just yesterday, and I have heard back. And it looks like assuming that everything works out, which, you know, the world is kind of unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. But assuming everything works out, I should be able to get a researcher to come on the channel and talk about some really interesting fandom research that I think is going to be super cool. I went to one of this person's talks, and it was such a fun talk, and it was so cool, and I loved it. But yeah, he if all goes well, he's going to be coming on the channel. And I was talking with him about like various things that, various like formats we could do this in. And he seemed pretty open to like any of them. And he's like, I have no preference. Go with your preference. And I'm like, I have no preference. So I figured I'd ask all of you what you would be interested in. I can make a video with him. Right now, what I'm kind of leaning towards asking him, and he seemed to think it would be the least amount of work, was having him on a live stream and having him do present the research that he presented at the conference to all of you. So he's already got the presentation all ready. It's a good presentation. I love the presentation. I think you'll like it too. And then maybe a Q&A after. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but also potentially we could do other things as well. That sounds awesome. Do it. All right. Yeah, the other options were like, I could do a video like talking with him about his academic journey, a video of him talking about his research. We could do a stream that's just like a big like AMA sort of thing. But I really like the idea of having him present his research and then also doing a Q&A. And he's just a really like fun guy to talk to. So I thought that would be fun. Does that like, but like if y'all think one of the other things that I mentioned or like something else sounds more fun or more interesting, I'm totally open to it. Each option's right. I think no matter what we do, no matter what happens, like he's gonna be awesome. He's gonna be great, and it's gonna be really fun to have him on the channel and stuff like that. This is the guy who you might have seen me talk about him in the Discord server. This is the guy where I come into the presentation, I sit down, and I sit through some really cool, I gave everybody at that symposium my business card. I emailed this guy first, both because I've actually met him before, a couple of years before this, and also because, like, unlike the other people at the symposium, we did end up, like, running to each other multiple times later in the weekend and talking, so I know him a bit better than the other people, but, like, yeah, like, he goes up, he puts on the presentation, and like 3 slides in, he's like, so, we're gonna need to do some definitions before we go any further. How many of you have heard of waifus? It was incredible. It was so good. It was so good. And it's actually kind of related to the paper that we're reading today. He was doing work on, I believe, parasocial relationships with fictional characters, which is somewhat related to the paper that we're reading today. So, hey, Wacky Lemon, welcome. So this is like people who want to be Alistair Has Been Hotel or people who have an OC Soda. I'd imagine the former. I think it's people who just sort of like identify with or relate to fictional characters. We haven't quite gotten to the paper yet. I'm sorry. But that's kind of the impression that I have from what little I've looked at. And what very little I know about this area, but I'm very interested in it, especially after seeing this guy's talk and a couple of other talks at the recent conference. Noelle, my beloved, you can't understand England's relationship with the royal family without knowing wife. What? What? And not specifically like fictives. Yeah, I don't think specifically fictives. I think this is like, they probably would have had a very difficult time getting a good sample size of fictives, if that makes sense. I think that's a pretty small population. They probably would have had to get like, freaking do snowball sampling, because it would be very difficult to just get a random sample of the population and get a good sample size of fictives in there. Personally, King Charles III is my wife. What? What are you talking about? I haven't seen the philosophy tube. No, I have not. I have not. I want to see this now, though. I will have to look that up after. Is this the philosophy tube, the royal family waifu stuff? I will have to investigate after the stream. That's wild. Thank you so much for letting me know about this. But yeah, all right. So, yeah, after this stream, I will email that researcher and I'll say, yeah, it sounds like we're leaning towards like, if you're up for it, let's, you can do the presentation from the conference and do a Q&A with chat. And of course, I will be making extra sure when we have real researchers on the channel. Well, not to say that I'm not a real researcher or Sai's not a real researcher or whatever, because we are, but like researchers who are not also streamers, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on all of you, okay, to make sure that you behave. Oh, hey Tyler, how you doing? Thank you. I love this new model too. It's like I only want to use this from now on, which is kind of a problem. Oh, thank you. I like the lop ears too. I am bunny today. I'm a bunny. The strange trend of people overly attaching themselves to royal drama. Oh. Especially with how, yeah, Diana was a really interesting case of like, people got really attached to Diana. Why does Britain still have a written? Okay, I will check it out. Thank you, thank you. I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, that sounds very, very interesting. Or why does Britain still have a queen? Oh, okay, all right. I like the little feather on the horn, feather physics. Hey, hey Red, how you doing? Yeah, I gotta have a feather in all of my models because it's part of the continuity, you know. This is my feather from my original form. Thank you, thank you. The feather physics was a really easy thing to do, actually. The buck teeth are good too. Thank you! I have a thing to say about royal drama, but YouTube. Yeah, let's be careful about the politics rule, just in case, depending on what it is a good feather. I like it a lot, and honestly, rigging it was super easy. I literally just, like, rigging the physics of it, I literally just, like, rotated it and rotated it. The feather is real, the rest of the body is just a decoy. That would explain a lot about my models. It's just there's a feather on there somewhere, and the feather is actually my consciousness possessing the model. This would explain so much about how I'm able to change so much from model to model. We're negatively polarized against republics from when we were a republic and Christmas was... I see. Oh my gosh. Okay. But I don't want to, like, stall too long. This is a pretty long paper, I think, so we're probably going to have to... At least I thought it was a long paper. Maybe it's not actually as long as I had it in my head. I guess it's not as long as I had it in my head. But either way, I do want to get reading on this. We'll see. Hopefully we don't have to make this a two-part thing, but... Interactive fiction games. Yeah! That reminds me of another researcher that I gave my business card that I would love to have on the channel that I've talked to a little bit. She does a lot of her research and motives for playing dating sims. And I really want to have her on the channel. I've been seeing her research. I only talked to her for the first time this year, but I've been seeing her research a lot at various conferences I've been to. And I'm really hoping that she'll be willing to come on the channel and talk about her research on dating sims. It sounds like she's actually... when I talked to her, she said something about potentially doing some research on VTubers in the future, which is very exciting. So I might ask her... I want to ask her soon after this first other researcher. Playing a dating sim with the dating sim researcher. That would be fun, actually. I wonder if I could get her to play a dating sim with me. A lot of interactive fiction games play around with the ambiguity of the point of view perspective. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on there. We were talking about this in the Discord, which is part of what got me to pick this paper for this week, but we were talking about like how some characters are intentionally created to sort of be blank slates so you can project yourself on them, or that's why some characters, like a lot of isekai protagonists, are so like generic and stuff. Yeah, Tyler is a genius. That's a great idea. I could have her recommend the dating sim, because I haven't really played too many dating sims. They're not really my genre, so I don't know as much about them, but maybe I'm in the wrong half of psych. I could be doing research on dating sims, right? Right? You could be. And her results were super interesting. Dr. Koike. Yeah, like, Mayu Koike. She's doing some really interesting stuff. She was looking at motives for playing dating sims, and also, like, how motives for playing dating sims varied depending on the relationship status of the player. It was super interesting. Her results were so cool. That's a lie. I'm not a genius. I just like the meme idea. Honestly, I think it's a fun idea. Oh man, maybe when I'm more established, like with interviewing other researchers, I feel like that's like kind of I want to at least establish a reputation as somebody who's like respectful and that people can trust to do a good interview before I start going a little wacky with it. But that sounds really fun. That sounds incredibly fun. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. At some point, I should play a dating sim on stream. You can all see my magnificent Riz, which I do not have. Did I tell you the story? Someday I'll have to tell you the story of how I have horrible Riz and my partner also has horrible Riz. I'll have to tell you the story of the way that my partner was flirting with me before we got together because it was so funny. Uma Musume dating sim one. That would feel weird. Those are my students. I don't want to date. I don't want to play a dating sim where like I'm dating people I've taught. That feels really gross to me. Those are my children. Those are my children. Anyway. Okay. Do not date the child horses, right? Yeah. Yeah, sorry, that's like research on me side. Oh my gosh, there's so many interesting possibilities out there. But let's read the paper. We're gonna lock in. We're gonna lock in. We're gonna do it. Not very jeez. Okay. Umuse has the presence, you're like raising them, which feels exactly like I'm their dad. I'm their dad. I don't want to date them. I'm their dad. Anyway, all right. So checking out the abstract first. So let's see a little bit more of what we're in for. The question of what contributes to users' identification with media characters remains an open issue in research. I think that we're seeing more and more of this lately, though, which makes me very happy. Super Creek is the inverse. No, I'm sorry. I'm still Super Creek's parent. I'm still Super Creek's parent. I don't care. I don't care. I'm her dad. I'm Super Creek's dad. If she wants to play house, it's like a child playing house, you know? I'm her dad. Okay. Apart from media interactivity, user characteristics like gender, age, immersive tendencies, and factual transportation into the narrative are promising factors. So I'm very excited to learn more about this. Like immersion, of course, is like how into the story you get, but there's this thing called narrative transportation, which I think is what they're referring to here, because it's in the title of the paper, narrative transportation. I've heard of this concept a fair amount, but I wasn't able to study fiction and stuff like that in graduate school, so I'm not actually, like, I had a friend who was doing stuff with narrative transportation, but I never really got to hear much about her research because it was one of those things where it's like, whenever we got together to hang out, we were both like, we just want to forget about the stress of graduate school, so we didn't really talk about it, but I'm very excited to learn more about narrative transportation. Yeah, research is still in its infancy. Yeah, this stuff is pretty new. And usage of different media limits cross-study comparability. I think that's more of a generalizability thing. I will acknowledge that there's differences in the types of media that you're using and how that affects how you form like relationships to characters. Like if you're playing a dating sim, that seems like a very different thing from playing like a video game where the player character actually has a personality, or a video game, or like reading a book or watching a movie. You know, I feel like these are different experiences, but it is interesting to see if any of these effects generalize, right? So like cross-study comparability, in one hand that makes sense. On the other hand, I do think it's interesting to compare across mediums to see if these effects are different. Narrative transportation like Star Trek transporters or the Infinity Train. I don't actually know. I know what a Star Trek transporter is to an extent. I don't know anything about an Infinity Train. First-person point of view games versus side-scroller games where the camera exists. Right, Wacky Lemon? I know that there has been like some research that looks at the camera that you have in games, whether it's like first-person or third-person or side-scroller and things like that, and how that is related to various psychological phenomena and stuff like that. But I don't know that, like, I know that research exists, I just haven't really read most of it. I think it's mostly done in terms of like violent video games and stuff like that, at least from what I've seen. Like whether the point of view of the game relates to how you feel about playing violent video games and comfort and aggression and things like that. But also just like in terms of relating to the character and like self-other overlap with the character, I imagine there's also something there too. Like if you're from their point of view, that probably feels a lot more like you and the character have a lot of overlap than if it's like a side scroller. At that point, you're probably don't feel like you identify nearly as much with the character, which is super cool. Hence, the current study set out to examine predictors of character identifications using a text-based fiction with purported interactivity, which was inspired by interactive fiction games. I don't know any interactive fiction. I probably do. I just don't know the term. Interactive fiction games. Is this like Life is Strange or something like that? That kind of thing? In an online experiment, 228 participants. I assume they'll define that. I'm sure they'll define it. I'm just very curious because I don't recognize the term immediately. You are likely to be eaten by a grue? What? Text adventures? Oh, like Myst? Oh, I don't know Zork. I don't know Zork. I don't know too many games. I know Myst is like the prototypical text adventure game, at least is what little knowledge I have. No, Myst is graphical? Oh, okay. Oh, I thought Myst was text. My game history is lacking. I clearly don't know much on this topic. I feel ashamed. Is it kind of like, I feel like I'm making myself sound older than I actually am when I ask, is a text-based adventure game a bit like a choose your own adventure book, but video game? Or, I don't know. I swear I'm not that old. I just wasn't allowed to play video games growing up. Oh, yeah, exactly. Interaction. Yeah, I know I know they're super old. Yeah, because like I think some of the first games were interactive fiction games. Okay. So it's basically a choose your own adventure book, but like as a game. Okay, this makes sense. What's a book? Kingwin, I know you're messing with me, but also it physically pains me. Knowing what interactive fiction games are is more of a sign of being old than not. That's fair. All right. In an online experiment, they have 228 participants, 15 to 60. That's a pretty good age range. Nice. Were randomly assigned to either an active condition where they could choose from different options or passive condition. It's like a visual novel without the pictures. It's a visual novel without the pictures. I mean, it's also kind of like a dating sim without the pictures. I'm having a moment. Please excuse me. I'm just... Visual novel without the visual, exactly. Basically, the loop of interaction fiction game is that it describes your environment and events happening around you, and then you type various verbs to do things. Ooh, that's cool. That's cool. It's not just a choose your own adventure. Is that not just a choose your own adventure book? Kinda? Yeah. I feel like I'm learning so much. See, this is... I should like call my parents and be like, you have no idea how much you hurt my future career by saying I wasn't allowed to play video games when I was a child. I see. Passive condition a book. It's like a book, but I assume it's kind of... I'm imagining, like, it shows you passages of the book, and then, like, it gives where there'd normally be options. So, yeah, I think it's basically, like, a book, but sort of, like, in click to go forward format. One of my favorite interactive fiction games is Hadean Lands? Or Hadean Lands? I needed to learn how to pronounce this word recently. Hadean, and I don't remember how to pronounce it. You'll find out why if you watch Fi. Why I had to learn to pronounce this, and I cannot recall. Choose your own adventure books have more limited input options. So, okay, so it's like a choose your own adventure book, but more... It's almost like Hadean. I failed you all. Once again, I have failed you all. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Hadean. 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 I know it's not too important. It's just like you've got me now. You've got me. I'm just. Okay, let's just keep reading. Let's just anywhere we're in. Yeah, a jackalope hole. It's like a rabbit hole, but worse. Okay. So there's two conditions. Two conditions. One condition is basically like, it's like interactive fiction game, sort of choose your own adventure, but video game. And the other one is a game that's basically that, but you don't have choices. Like, I don't say lamp because I can't pronounce it, so I just say light or something. Yeah, I don't know if there's another... I don't actually know enough about the Hadean period to actually, like, know how else to describe it. Jackalope holes have much better headroom than rabbit holes. Perfect! Right, because you need to or else you'd get stuck. Okay. So they were randomly assigned to either have an interactive story or just a story. And they filled out questionnaires assessing immersive tendencies, level of identification, presumably with the characters, and narrative transportation. Multiple linear regression models. They have multiple predictor variables. The land's inhabited by the ruler of the underworld.
Nice. We like it. We like it.
So multiple linear regression models, so they have multiple predictors. Presumably it's the condition that they were randomly assigned to. So they have one between subject predictor, which is whether they had the interactive game or not. And then they have various continuous predictors, like just general tendency to get immersed in things, how much the participants identified with the characters, and how much they felt transported into the narrative, and how that significantly predicted identification with the main character. So their outcome variable is identification with the main character specifically. So wait, what's level of identification then? I guess we'll have to find out. We'll have to find out. Because if level of identification is not level of identification with the main character, then they can't have that as... If they're both the same thing, you can't have one predicting the other thing, because that's just a thing predicting itself, right? Estimated time of the Hadean lands on IFTP 30... What? Whoa. Big ball of... What is happening? Interactive fiction games tend to refer to the player character in first person. That makes sense. That makes sense. So, like, I do this. I do this. So, oh, that is interesting. I would have almost expected them to be mostly in second person. This is good information. How upset you get when a bad thing happens or happy when a good thing happens? Maybe. Let's find out. Ooh, puzzles. I like puzzles. The current findings support theoretical models on media interactivity and identification. Okay, what does that mean? Yet several open issues, such as the role of media content, engaging versus mundane, and character features like similarity with users, remain to be answered. I'm describing the Hadean period. I see. The moon. Very exciting. I'm sorry. I'm like, my attention is everywhere. Okay. Now we're in the introduction, so let's see. Hopefully they'll define some of these terms that I'm not as familiar with. The most famous line from interactive fiction, "You are likely to get eaten by a grue," is definitely in second person. Oh no. Are grues edible? Could we eat the grue before the grue eats us? Is that possible? This is the omnivore dilemma. It's eat or be eaten. Or something. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't know what a grue is either. I'm pretty sure a grue isn't vegan, though. Anything is edible at least once. I don't know. What if it's like a giant cube of some indestructible material that's too big to, like, fit in your mouth, but also you can't break it down into smaller pieces? That can't be edible, right? Not even once. I'm probably overthinking this. My eyebrows look so concerned because that's genuinely what my face is doing. I'm like, I don't know. This feels like a very important issue. If you're truly an omnivore, if you haven't eaten everything, that's true. I'm not an omnivore. Grus live in darkness, which is why you need a flashlight or a candle or whatever to not be eaten. They could be friends. We could be friends down in the dark. Incredible. The game where all you can do is eat stuff. That's just dungeon meshy. That's just delicious in dungeon. What happens when an unstoppable eater... That's a great question. There are so many things happening in here. There's so many things happening in chat. I'm sorry. I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna lock in. I'm training. I'm training for when we get another researcher on here where I have to somewhat stay on focus, on topic and not get distracted by chat. This is the training arc. I'm putting the weights on, you know, like freaking Rock Lee and Naruto. I'm putting the weights on. And I will become strong and powerful. Why did I look at chat? I can't look at chat anymore for a wide variety of reasons. Chat is becoming inhospitable to life. Haven't you said that every time? Shut up, Tyler. Don't call me out like that. What youth? What youth, Torg? Please imagine someone... Okay, alright, Kingwin. I will manifest them in my brain. Okay. Identifying with a fictional character lies at the core of many media experiences. Does it? I mean, okay, they have citations. I've been thinking about this lately ever since that conference and talking with people. Especially talking with Dr. Koike, like about the dating sims and stuff. Or no, it wasn't her that I was talking with. There were some other people who were doing some really interesting work that I'd also like to invite on the channel. And they were doing some really interesting work on identifying with characters and like why people like media with love triangles, and they were going at it from an angle of like people can identify with the person at the like sort of vertex or whatever it's called of the love triangle and stuff. And I'm thinking about it like some people I think very much do like to sort of identify with characters in media and maybe even relate and like project on and sort of like almost even self-insert into media. And then there's other people, though, who don't do that and don't want to do that. And I think it's a really interesting individual difference on, like, do you prefer to imagine yourself in a fictional world, or do you do it, like, do you read fictional worlds because you want to imagine yourself in there, or because you want to read about something that's completely different from your day-to-day life, but you have zero desire to see yourself in that situation, right? Like, I think that is some sort of individual difference in motive for consuming fictional media. And yeah, it's interesting stuff. I don't know. I've just been thinking about it lately. I don't know what the more common motive is. I don't know. Ah, yes, I get what you mean, Torg. I'm the type of person, though, who really doesn't want to self-insert myself into stories. Like, when I'm on Archive of Our Own, if I see something that's like a reader insert fic or something like that, whether it's like the author's original character or they wrote it so that you can pretend that you are in the fictional universe, I just scroll right past it. I would never want to read that kind of thing. I have zero interest in seeing myself in the fictional story. When I was younger, I was like, oh, that's cool. Now that I'm older, I'm just like, and I'm not saying this is a maturity thing, by the way. I just think like my tastes have changed over time. The idea of seeing myself in a fictional character in a holistic way really is unappealing to me. Like seeing certain experiences I might have had is like cool to me, like that kind of thing. Like if I see like a non-binary character, I get very excited, or if I see like a character that is like that works at a university, I get excited. But that's more because like I never want to like insert myself into a character, you know? I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. It's like, it's cool that I have common experiences with this character, but I'm not identifying with the character in like a more in-depth way in that. Yeah. if that makes sense. I don't know. Yeah. Oh my gosh, My Immortal reference in this chat. It was recently, like, My Immortal's, was it 20th or 20? I think My Immortal's 20th anniversary, I think, recently. I could be getting the year wrong. It might be 25th. But yeah, My Immortal had a big anniversary recently. Shout out to My Immortal. Ebony, Darkness, Dementia, Raven Way. Something preps. 20th anniversary. That feel like you'd be able to better understand their situation. Yeah. It's not even that I wouldn't even want a lot of my favorite characters. I would not want to be friends with my favorite characters. I just think that they're interesting. Hey Alex, how you doing? I think that's always a good question when you play something like FGO. Do you see Gouda as yourself or as their own character? Yeah, I think that's also a really interesting question, Inkswatch, because like Gouda is really interesting to me in that they're sort of portrayed as this like they were initially supposed to be kind of a bland self-insert, and they still sort of are. But also, Gouda, like, some of the lines that you have to choose from in the story, even though they don't actually change the course of the story, which, like, for the most part in FGO, like, you'll have dialogue options, but in the vast majority of cases, whichever option you pick does nothing. But you can see some personality shining through in them, even though Gouda was initially intended to be a self-insert character. Yeah, they've definitely gotten more personality over the years. You're right, Tyler, you're calling me out. Oh, this is a new one. This is the new one. This is the first time that I've used this model on a stream. I wanted to be cute and small, like others, like my children. Okay, right, locking in. Yes, check it out. Hey, Doomcry! People bring up challenging bias in papers, especially when it's a topic that hasn't been too deeply explored in a more full. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I only self-insert if I create my own character, like in an RPG. Even when I create a character in an RPG, I don't self-insert. Like, if I'm in Pokemon, yeah, I'll customize my character a lot, but I won't customize them in a way that, like, this is how I would want to dress or how I would want to look. I customize my character in a way that I think looks cool, but not necessarily in a way that I would ever wish to appear, if that makes sense. So even in like customize games where you customize your character, I don't. No, you're good. You're good. That's Marlin, right? I recognize the icon, even though the name is different. You're Marlin, aren't you? No. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna be in hyperfixation limbo for 5 million years, one way or another. So I really should lock in though, because I need to finish the stream so that I can send an email to that researcher, so that hopefully you can come on the channel. Yeah. Is that rabbit with antlers, I assume? Yes, I am jackalope, yes, which is rabbit with antlers. I want to know if they gauge enmeshment with characters. Yeah, we'll have to find out. They're definitely talking about identification with characters, and I'm not sure if that's distinct from enmeshment. I'm excited to find out, though. Not sure how to fix that. It looks like YouTube recently made a change where chat no longer shows display names, it shows usernames, and I'm not sure when they made the change or why. Not only do I address my like character, use Pokemon to decide which name I like being called. Nice. I get it. Yeah, that's definitely not my experience, but like I do know a lot of people who like do stuff like that. Anyway, where were we? Past studies have repeatedly linked identification with media characters to increased media enjoyment. So I'm going to be highlighting stuff because this is one of the first papers I've read in this area, so I'm like sort of still getting an idea of what's going on here. So the more you identify with the characters in a story, the more you enjoy the story on average. For me, it's kind of the opposite, but you know, chalk that up to sampling error. This is social psychology is a description of what people do on average. It's never going to be a perfect image of what any individual does. I've been spreading 2 different channels over the past few months and it's a bummer. Ugh, that's annoying. I'm sorry. More positive affect and empathy and a facilitated experience of flow. So that means you get more into the work, you get sort of like more sucked into it, and like it's like that thing, flow is like that thing where like, you know, you pick up a book and you start reading and then you look up and it's like 3 hours later kind of thing. Like you're just in the zone, but it's reading. Greater interest in learning, and enhanced persuasiveness of media content. The enhanced persuasiveness thing is really interesting to me because it's like fictional content with persuasion. And persuasion, like I do, like my main research is looking at belief in conspiracy theories. And, you know, part of that is like belief in misinformation and stuff like that. I can't find where to, I don't know if you can change the username. I know you can change the display name, but I don't know if you can change your underlying username, can you? You might be able to. I'm not sure. As such, character identification is thought to shape the success of applications that seek to induce behavior change or attitude change in the context of entertainment education. You know, Sai and I have been talking about doing, or well, I don't know if I got Sai in on this, but I think it's really interesting. Like, we were talking about, does parasocial relation, so like we could get into like, so if you have a parasocial relationship with someone, are you more persuaded by them? Which is like not quite the same thing as identifying with somebody, but you know, I think it's related. And honestly, I think the answer is probably yes. Or healthcare. So essentially they're saying we can leverage identification, or there's evidence that identification with fictional characters can make a story more persuasive. Apart from these beneficial effects, however, identification with has also been shown to be associated with negative media consequences, such as addictive behavior and aggression. Interesting. So I imagine it like depends on the type of media, right? Or like the sort of story that you're working with, the type of behaviors that the character that you identify with engage in, that kind of thing. Isn't healthcare one word? I've seen it both ways. I don't know if there's a correct way or if it's just one of those things where you could do it either way. I don't know. I'm just a little guy. That's not my area. Sorry. I don't know. Well, prior conceptualizations of identification have focused on how readers or viewers felt about the character in terms of sympathy or similarity. Current definitions put their emphasis on how readers feel with the character. So kind of like empathy? Are they conceptualizing of identification is a bit like empathy with a character? Just like, because they have identification as a predictor variable and then identification with the player character or the main character as an outcome variable, which means that if one's a predictor and one's the outcome, they need to be conceptually distinct variables. So maybe when they just say plain identification, they mean empathy. And then when they say identification with character, it might be like self-other overlap, maybe? Like they're using the same word, but it's different things? Oh, interesting. Many things. Can neither confirm, because most of the games I play don't really have a character to identify with. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I don't often identify with characters too much, I don't think. I could be wrong, though. Maybe I just don't have self-awareness of it. Hence, identification is construed as an imaginative process through which an audience member assumes the identity. No! So that is it. Yeah. An imaginative process through which an audience member assumes the identity, goals, and perspective of a character. I strongly identify with the square in Tetris. That is interesting, though. So identification isn't, like, feeling the emotions of the character in the sense of empathy. It's literally, like, a self-other overlap thing with a fictional character. So do they have identification? Is it, like, general tendency to identify, then, as the predictor, and then identifying with this one particular character as the outcome? Very curious. I know it was a joke, Torg, but, you know, I don't know. People can... It's like when I look at, like, a broken plate or something and I say, oh, mood. I can identify with that. Like, I can relate to that broken plate, you know? Oh, I see. Identification is construed... as such, a person reading a book, watching a movie, or playing a video game will experience and interpret the text, film, or game... No Oxford comma. For shame. For shame. No Oxford comma. I am deeply upset by this. How dare they? How dare they do this to me? Always use an Oxford comma, friends. Or else I will show up in your bedroom at night and I will haunt you. I will become a sleep paralysis demon until you start using the Oxford comma. I don't know. Red's just changed. Do you relate to the Oxford comma? I do not identify with the Oxford comma, but I am morally convicted about the Oxford comma. I have very strong feelings about the Oxford comma, and I use it to judge people's morality. Oh, there we go, Marlon. Now I know who you are. I mean, I knew who you are, I just recognized the icon, but if you ever changed the icon and kept, like, the wacky lemon thing, I would have no idea who you were. It's embarrassing. As such, blah, blah, blah. In other words, identification may be described as temporary alteration of media users' self-perception. Interesting. I've never seen identification as, like, changing your self-concept. I always thought of it as, like, changing your perception of the character. I thought it was like your perception of the character moving to align with your perception of yourself, as opposed to your perception of yourself aligning with the thing. Oh no, Alex, I'm scared to review your room. I'm a little afraid. I'm a little afraid. Guess we'll see. We'll see. Which on one hand involves the transitory loss of self-awareness. So essentially they're saying you're projecting yourself into the character's shoes. You're moving away from your own self and more towards the character, as opposed to the other way around. They're sort of blending on how you interpret a narrative being influenced by how you characterize them. Yeah, a little bit. I guess the way that they're phrasing this is more as you are becoming closer, like, it's the directionality of the phrasing kind of makes sense. You also using experiences as a character as a yardstick to understand other scenarios. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's interesting to me that they're framing it as, like, you're not projecting yourself onto the character, you're taking on the character's, you're taking the character's traits into your own self-image, perhaps temporarily. I'm having a lot of thoughts about Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint right now. Oh no! I'm gonna, like, close this paper and go write a fanfic or something and, like, have a bit, like, references section for the fanfic of Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint of, like, freaking Kim Dokja doing his what would Yoo Jung-hyuk do, and I'm having a moment where characters can die but the player looks into the what is happening? Okay, predictors of character identification. When I got really into a story and get fully immersed and have that flight of fantasy kind of dissociation. Yeah, I think that's what they refer to as narrative transportation in here. We'll have to check just to be sure, but I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Or maybe immersion. They're using immersion and narrative transportation as separate constructs, and I'm not actually sure what the difference is, so hopefully they tell us. Because I'm not sure if what you're describing is what they would call immersion, or if it's what they'd call narrative transportation, or if it's a mix of both, or I'm so very curious. I want to know more. I want to know more. Which means we have to read more. We will learn. We will achieve greatness and enlighten ourselves to the story of the paper, and we will be narratively transported into the academic paper because we are starting to identify with Anna Felnhofer or something. I'm reminded of a certain character that shows up in Core Observer that's pretty deep in the... Yeah, I don't know that one, unfortunately. I'm culturally deprived, as my mother puts it. I don't actually know a whole lot of media outside of anime. Ah, Marlon, that's really interesting. I'll have to check that out. Lately I've become a big fan of metafiction. So, and that sounds like what that is, so I might have to check that out. All right. Although a considerable body of literature has explored the effects of character identification on media consumers, findings are still inconsistent with regards to the question of what contributes to identifying with a fictional character, which is kind of what they're going at. They're trying to figure out what type of people and when people are more likely to identify with a fictional character. they don't define these things, does that mean they're terms of art in this field that you can expect to find in a lot of other writing about? They should define them even if that's the case. I do know, I know narrative transportation is a fairly like well-known construct in this sort of area, but I'm not in this area, so I don't really know what it is. And I imagine immersion's probably pretty similar. There's a whole thing about like not being able to directly re-experience violent scenarios as a memory stream, so the memory has to be reframed as a game to get past the auto. Ooh. Deltarune deals a lot with the idea of a player as something foreign from the avatar. Ooh, that's fun. That's fun. It's also like a lot of those like I'm thinking of various books that I've read lately, books that I've read or like comics that I've read where it's the trope of it's like that version of isekai where you get transported into a novel and you are in the place of a character. Like all the whole villainous isekai subgenre or like scum villain or whatever. It's kind of like you are the character now, but you also are not actually the same person as the character. And there's this sort of weird, like, you are living their life, but also it's not you. You know, I never actually saw Neverending Story, so I don't know for sure, but maybe. I don't know. I am culturally deprived. Identification is hypothesized to be influenced by a range of factors, including not only different features of the medium, the level of so that makes sense. Like maybe you identify more with a character when you're actually playing that character. This model's so good. Thank you, Fi. Hey, Fi, how you doing? How you doing? I love this model. I never want to use another model again, which is a problem because I'm working on another model as we speak, and I don't like it as much as this model. Oops. But also specific attributes of the character, like appearance, customization options. Makes sense. And a range of user characteristics like gender, age, engagement with content. Among these, interactivity has received considerable attention in the past, and which makes sense. Like, if you are able to control the character or interact with the character, yeah. Yeah, I'm very excited about the new model. I guess you could always just Chimera on all your favorite traits. True. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, among these, interactivity has received considerable attention in the past, and several theoretical approaches have incorporated interactivity as a causal factor. You know, this reminds me of, like, both the discussion of live 2D models and also this discussion of customization and things like that reminds me of... There's a line of research that I think is really interesting, and I was super sad that nobody was presenting on it at the conference that I went to a couple weeks ago. It's avatar customization. Oh yeah, I tweaked the mouth tracking on this one. Like, I'm not using any fancier tracking, but I tweaked some of the settings in the model, so the mouth is tracking me better than it usually would. But yeah, like, there's a lot of research into avatar customization. Well, not a lot, but I have seen some research into avatar customization, and it's super cool. Proteus effect. I know that you've mentioned this before, and I cannot remember what it is. A behavior of an individual within virtual worlds is changed by the characteristics of their avatar. Oh yeah, I was thinking of not quite the Proteus effect, because the Proteus effect sounds like the avatar comes first and then the behavior and characteristics come because of the avatar. I'm more thinking of like how thoughts, feelings, identity, characteristics, beliefs, and things like that influence the type of avatar you create. So like... Yeah. Like, I definitely imagine that there's, like, a, what is it called? A reciprocal thing. And then he pauses talking about avatar customization, about customizing their avatar. Right. I just think it's really interesting. I would love to do work on, like, research on why people choose certain characteristics. I know that a couple years ago at a conference, I did see a really interesting work on, it wasn't about VTubers specifically, though I talked about VTubers with the researcher because I thought it was related. But they were looking at whether Black individuals, how they choose the skin tone of their virtual avatars. Because sometimes there's concerns, you know, about like racism online and things like that. And so when they're creating a virtual avatar, they might pick a lighter skin tone to avoid experiencing that. And other times, you know, maybe depending on the situation, depending on the person's personality, beliefs, experiences, they might pick a skin tone that matches theirs. There was, I think, one poster at this conference that looked at how, like, the skin tone versus of the emojis that you use, like, who chooses to use emojis with the skin tones and who just sticks with the default yellow emojis, right? And that was really cool too. That was really interesting. The whole thing, like how we choose how we represent ourselves online outside of photographs of ourselves, that whole thing, that whole aspect is super interesting to me. But that's not what this paper is about. I think it's related, but that's not what this paper is about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastical skin colors. I wonder about that too. I always use the yellow. I do too. I'm just lazy. I'm always skeptical. Yeah. But yeah, I think it raises a lot of questions, and like, who chooses human versus inhuman characteristics for their avatar? Do they make their avatar taller? Do they make it shorter? What do they do with the hair? Do they, like, how does, I have so many questions. I have so many, like, yeah, I mainly pick the default yellow. Well, part of it's because I'm lazy. Part of it's because I forget there are other options. I don't know. Glad we all use yellow. I wonder why yellow. All I can think of is The Simpsons, or maybe it was because the displays used to have fewer color options, and yellow was just like the closest color option that they had to skin color, so they just used that. I don't know. I'm very curious. I'll have to do like a weird little deep dive on that. Hey, Dormithrax, how you doing? Serena and Rara from V4 Mirai both confirmed the models match their exact skin tone. That is so cool. That is so cool. Yeah, I'm very interested in this stuff. I admit, a lot of my models tend to be paler than I actually am, largely because I feel like cryptid equals spooky, and being very, like, washed out feels spooky. And also I don't go out in the sun very much, so I'm kind of exaggerating my own paleness. There's a video essay about that I scroll. Ooh, interesting. Me and my green skin and branches on my head. Heck yeah. Ghost. Yeah, kind of ghosty vibes. It reminds me of how Lego minifigs are yellow specifically because it's supposed to be totally racially neutral. Interesting. That did not occur to me, but that kind of makes sense. Okay. Oh, yellow smiley face from before. Yeah, I'm just wondering why the smiley face was yellow too. I wonder if they talked about this. I have a book about, like, that has a couple chapters on the evolution of emojis and stuff. It's that Gretchen McCullough one that I keep mentioning, because internet. And I'm very curious if that talks about why yellow. I'll have to go and check it out. There's so many things I want to do after the stream. I'm gonna have to start making a list. Yeah, the yellow smiley dates back to the 1950s. I wonder if that was because of print media. Because, you know, when you're printing things out, you have the cyan ink, the magenta ink, and the yellow ink. And mixing them to get specific colors is a very delicate thing with, like, specifically ratios of those colors to each other, and then, you know, like black ink as well. And I wonder if it was just easier to print things that were cyan, magenta, or yellow if you're doing it in color, and therefore the yellow smiley face was the easiest thing to do. Yeah, that is true. That is true. There is that sort of baggage with using yellow to refer to skin tone. Much to think about. Much to think about. Okay, sorry, we've gotten way off track, as per usual, so let's get back to the paper. Among these, interactivity has, okay, assumes that the extent to which the user may control the narrative and story outcome influences identification, which I think the conceptual model of interactivity effect. So this is a theoretical model. I'm going to make a note of this for myself. Model of interactivity effects. This is specifically looking, or it's a theoretical model that predicts that the more you interact with a character or through a character, and I'm oversimplifying this, I'm sure, predicts identification, which I think makes sense because it makes them feel more like a real person to an extent, and especially if you are controlling the character, there is kind of that overlap between your actions and the character's actions, unless you are explicitly role-playing through the character, you know? The moderated mediation model. We're bringing statistics into this so quickly. Interactivity, so in this case, they're defining interactivity specifically as controlling the character as opposed to interacting with the character, which is interesting. The moderated mediation model of media interactivity. And so this is a bit more specific. This is not just any type of interaction, but specifically controlling the character leads to identification. So it sounds like the conceptual model of interactivity effects is more general. It's about like either controlling the character or interacting with the character in the video game, even if you're not in control of them, whereas the moderated mediation model of media interactivity is specifically when you control the character, you identify more with them. Okay. Some empirical data supports this, showing higher identification scores in users who played rather than watched a video game. So there's some data, but I feel like the way they phrase this kind of implies that there's also data that doesn't support this. No real reason except the original Smiley looked good with the color as far as I can find. Oh, okay. Or in participants who were able to select the plot rather than merely consuming it in audiovisual fiction. So that's they're probably basing their model of like the interactive versus not interactive fiction games for their study design on this sort of research of like looking at whether having control over what's happening influences things. There's an issue with the SS14 roleplay communities where people tend to over-identify with their characters to the point of forming grudges over things that happen to their characters. Yeah, that is tricky. Like some people in roleplay communities, they're not actually role-playing a character, they're kind of role-playing some version of themselves, whereas other people don't. And when those people roleplay together, it can get messy real fast because the understanding of what is happening between them is different. And because the understanding is different, things that might be a horrible violation to one person are just normal to another person or whatever. It's the whole boundary setting thing. Did people playing Mario Odyssey identify more strongly with the Goombas than players of other Mario games? Did you get to play as the Goombas in Mario Odyssey? I mean, that's an empirical question. You could like have somebody play Mario Odyssey versus another Mario game and like see, do people identify more with Goombas if they're able to play as a Goomba, right? Though I imagine there's probably already some research on something similar to that. Maybe not specifically like identifying with Goombas in Mario Odyssey, but like looking at how much you identify as a character that you have played as versus have not. Yeah, the hat that let you control any unit. I see. I wonder if it also made you less comfortable attacking Goombas or whatever. If you identify with them. Ah, sleep well, CDM, sleep well. Have a good night. Good rest. Identifying as a brain parasite. It's a little scary. Generally, it is important to note that consistent definition of interactivity is complicated by the fact that interactivity in a written narrative is different from interactivity in a video game. Or in a video? In a video game. While in text-based narratives, interactivity pertains to the way the reader engages with the narrative. In video games, it involves customizing the character's appearance and willfully directing its actions. I see. So depending on the medium and depending on like things like the level of customization and the same concept, interactivity may look very, very different depending on the medium you're working with or even just the individual game you're talking about. It's been argued that interactive fiction may be more suitable than video games for answering the question of whether and how interactivity impacts identification. Oh, here we go. Hey, Time, how you doing? So here we go. They're identifying interactive fiction now. Or, sorry, not identifying, defining. Characterize the POV characters a lot more than other. That makes sense. It reminds me of like just dating sims or just like visual novels or whatever. Like, or even just like, power fantasy shows. Like some of them, the main character doesn't have any particular like features and it's very easy to project yourself on them. Other cases, they very much do make the main character like have their own personality. I'm thinking kind of like harem shows in anime, like there's some harem shows where the main character is just sort of like cardboard cutout and all the girls are, and it's the idea being that you can identify with the sort of cardboard cutout because he has no personality of his own and you can pretend like the girls are falling all over you. Whereas like there are other harem shows like the first one that comes to mind, and I don't know if this is like the best example, is like 100 girlfriends who really, 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 really love you or whatever. And in that case, the main character does very much have a very strong personality. So like Ranma, yeah, Ranma too, Ranma as well. Hey, the Playmaker, how you doing? Everybody loves Cardboard Kun. No, I'm gonna shave Cardboard Kun's head. I don't trust any show where the main male character isn't on the cover art, only the girls. I think that's probably a decent litmus test, Arctelos. Hey, Dwarwithrex. After about a month of making no progress, I'm finally doing stuff for my lab, so I might edit with the fictional characters in their comeback arc. Heck yeah! It's been argued that, okay, as such, interactive fiction is assumed to be similar to a video game, yet entail fewer confounds than found. That makes sense. I think an interactive fiction game, if it's solely text-based, like they describe here and like y'all have been saying, that does feel a lot cleaner and a lot easier to manipulate. Like, there are a lot fewer things going on, like character customization, not there. Graphics, not there. Just seems a lot easier to work with to isolate individual effects without worrying about third variables coming in there. Here, using interactive fiction instead of video games in research allows to test for the hypothesizes, is this a typo? Hypothesized associations whilst controlling for confounds. Yeah, hell yeah, for sure, for sure. Though that does make the question, this would have to be like the interactive fiction to completely control the confounds would have to be something like, say, Fate Grand Order or something, where it looks like you have a choice, but no matter what you say, the outcome is the same. Because otherwise, if your choices actually affect the outcome, then you're introducing a confound, because now the people in the interactive condition are potentially reading a different story with different events than the people in the non-interactive condition. So you'd have to make it seem like it's interactive, but it's not actually interactive, and everybody's getting the same story, just some people feel like they can control it and other people feel like they can't control it. That's an interesting problem. And you'd have to like make it in such a way, you'd have to make it kind of like a Pokemon game, or like, no, Fate Grand Order's kind of like this too, or like various games where it's like you have pseudo control over the narrative, but it's like the but thou must sort of thing, or like where both of the options, or where the outcome makes sense no matter which option you pick. Like it's the same outcome, like both choices give you the same outcome, but it makes sense for both choices is kind of the thing. Everything comes back to FGO. Well, FGO is like the main sort of like game like this that I've played outside of like Pokemon games, you know? So it's like the first thing that I think of when I think of this kind of stuff. I'm sorry. I guess Uma Musume is kind of like that a little bit, because like the choices don't actually really impact the story too much, but they do impact the stats that you get, which can impact the story indirectly. But like, I don't know. Now I want to make a choose your own adventure book, but everything's duplicated, so there are loads of choices between different pages, but you get the same story no matter what. I think that's what they would have to do to like truly eliminate confounds outside of a feeling of control in here. Like, genuinely. Unironically. But we'll see how they did it. I'm curious to see what they actually did. Like, did they actually do that and eliminate confounds, or did they introduce confounds by playing interactive fiction straight as, like, in your choices actually matter, right? Like, because interactive... It's hard. It's a hard choice, right? Because, like, if your choices don't matter, then you don't actually have any control, and you might be able to figure out that your choices don't matter, in which case the manipulation fails because people know they have no control. However, if you do make the choices matter, again, you're introducing confounds because different people are getting different narratives. Then the story in the book is about thinking you have control over something, but you actually don't. Oh my gosh. You're getting real meta there, Xenotime, and I encourage this. I love meta stories. All right. Here, using interactive fiction given their rigor, experiments with interactive fiction are better suited than video games to validate the relationships between different variables like interactivity, transportation, and immersion, and identification is postulated by theoretical models such as the one of Green and Jenkins in 2014. Is that the... to date, research which relates these constructs under controlled conditions is still rather scarce. Or you do two controls, each with one ending and one experimental with a choice. That's a good thought, Arcnavist. I like that thought. That's a good thought. Yeah. Thinking about the arc words, no one can choose who they are in this world of Delta. Oh, jeez, the Stanley Parable. Is that what the Stanley Parable is? I've never played it. Where were we? Apart from interactivity, narrative transportation. Okay, so narrative transportation. Here we go. We're finally getting a definition of narrative transportation. I say finally because I've been wondering what this is for years. It's not like they waited too long in the paper. I've just been curious about what this construct is for a very long time. Yeah, but that's a really smart idea, Arcnavist. I love that idea. That's a really good way of doing it, I think. Broadly speaking, the transportation encompasses the cognitive and emotional immersion in a story. So how is this different from immersion? Is it like a more general thing from immersion, or like... I'm gonna write narrative transportation. How does this differ from immersion? Cognitive and emotional immersion in a story. See, this is kind of what I thought it was, just based on like from how I've heard it talked about, but they have narrative transportation and immersion as two separate variables predicting the outcome variable in this study. So they have to be distinct enough that they're not both immersion if they're two different variables. So like what I don't know what's going on. I want to know, which of course the way to find out is to keep reading. Yeah, immersion is very vague. A concise conceptualization is an open issue, and different terms are currently used to describe it, such as immersion. See, it's also just described as immersion. So what does this paper mean when it says immersion, when it's using immersion and narrative transportation as two separate predictor variables, but narrative transportation is sometimes just referred to as immersion? They're going to need to be real precise in their language. Or what? No, wait, maybe it wasn't just immersion, it was immersive tendencies. So your tendency to get immersed. Kind of like the distinction we've been reading for the past few weeks, like belief in conspiracy theories. And we talked about the distinction between belief in a specific conspiracy theory and then conspiracy mentality. I wonder if it's the same sort of distinction. So like narrative transportation is how immersed you are in this particular story, whereas immersive tendencies is your tendency to get immersed in stories overall. And they would be correlated, probably about moderately correlated, but they are still distinct constructs. I'm guessing that's what's here. I'm guessing that's what's happening. Okay. Well, let's keep reading to find out. We don't need to speculate. They're going to tell us, but that's my guess. That's the bet that I'm putting in. In concise, generally, transportation refers to the narrative as a whole, while conceptually different phenomena identification pertains solely to the characters of the... Okay, so you have immersive tendencies, which is your tendency to get sucked into stories overall. Narrative transportation is more specific. It's, are you getting immersed in this particular story? And finally, you have identification, which is getting immersed in a particular character. So immersive tendencies is like the big umbrella thing. Narrative transportation is for the immersion in this specific story, and then identification is immersion in a specific character. I think that's where we're getting. Okay, immersive tendencies, don't mind me taking notes. Tendency to get immersed, and then you have narrative transportation, which is immersion in a particular story. And then you have identification, which is kind of immersion in a particular character. So from more general to more specific. Though video games also tend to limit the actual choices you can make too, which can be considered another way of passive. Yeah. So yeah, books more passive because you can't make choices. Video games give you choices, but limited choices, which is also relatively passive. At least not unless the game is more of a simulator like Dwarf Fortress or something. The latter tends to make more specific narratives unworkable. I see. Sense. Empirical sustenance of this assumption is still it hypothesized that transportation into the narrative is a prerequisite for character identification. So some people have suggested that you already have to be sucked into the narrative to start identifying with a character. We don't know this for sure yet. And I think that, like, I'm thinking, like, how many of you have seen that one anime or, like, read the manga, Uramichi-san? Let me see. Uramichi. Life Lessons with Uramichi Oni-san. How many of you have heard of this? It's about, like, a guy, Uramichi, and he is sort of like a host slash actor on a children's TV show, kind of like Barney a little bit. Or like, you know, it's just like a kid's morning TV show, and Uramichi's on there, and Uramichi is incredibly, deeply cynical and dead inside. I watched the anime. I haven't read the manga. I watched the anime, and I was not at all immersed in this show. Like, I did not feel, like, sucked into the show, but I also deeply related to Uramichi. So, like, is it possible that you need narrative transportation to identify with a character? Yes, perhaps on average. For me, in my particular case, I don't think that's a necessary condition. But again, like, social psychology is the study of what people are like on average, not specific individuals, and social psychology findings are not going to apply to every single individual. Yeah, it's a fun show. Uramichi truly encapsulates the deepest, darkest, saddest parts of my heart, in a way. It's kind of fun. Another predictor of identification is thought to lie in the construct of immersive tendencies. Contrary to transportation, which describes factual immersion in the story, which immersive tendencies encompasses... Oh yeah, okay, so it's basically what I've been describing. Narrative transportation is immersion in a specific story. Immersive tendencies is just your tendency to get sucked into stories. I think you need to write a paper about Uramichi Oni-san. Nah. I don't even know what I'd write. Just like me, for real, for real. I feel like the fact that I'm identifying with him is a sign that there's something deeply wrong with me, and I probably need more therapy than I've already Oh no! I'm with you on that point. A lot of manga I'm not transferred into the narrative yet can relate to this one character. Yeah, it's like reminding me, lately I've been reading a webtoon, The Greatest Real Estate Developer. And honestly, I just keep reading it, but I don't even really like it that much. But, like, there are some characters in that story that I kind of relate to. But I'm not, like, reading that story because I'm into it or excited about it. I'm reading the story to pass time. Like, I'm sure that that sounds peak. What's the plot? Dude gets isekai'd into a novel that he was reading. And it's basically like a villainous isekai, but the main character's a man. He gets isekai'd into a novel that he's reading as sort of like the shitty, slimy, villainous son of a count who's like an early antagonist to the main character. And he knows that this character is eventually going to get killed by the main character, and also, like, this character is going to suffer immensely before that because his family's going to fall into financial ruin. So our main character just so happens to be a civil engineer. Villainess. Yeah, our main character happens to be a civil engineer in his original world, so he decides that the best way for him to survive in this world, and also just generally make a bunch of money so he never has to work another day in his life, is to start a whole bunch of construction and engineering projects so that he can make a whole bunch of money and save his butt and also live out the rest of his life easily. Yeah. Civil engineering mention. Yeah. It's an isekai where the main character is a civil engineer. Civil engineer gets isekai'd into a character in a book he'd been reading and goes all civil engineer on the fantasy world. Oh no! You better watch your back, Xenodai. You know those civil engineers. I don't know what I'm talking about at all. Civil engineering power fantasy, basically. Yeah. I don't know if I like it so much. The main character is very funny because he spends the entire story, like, say, like, acting all villainous, like, haha, I'm just here to make money and do all this shady stuff so that I can make all the money and then I never have to work a day in my life and I can just laze about for the rest of my life. And I'm so evil and sneaky and whatever, and, like, making evil villain faces and stuff and making people sign shady contracts and stuff. And he's doing this throughout the entire story, but at the same time, he is objectively improving the lives of everybody around him. And also even when he has opportunities to stop working and lays around like he keeps saying he wants to do, he just doesn't. He just keeps working. I think civilization building isekai are a thing now, Astral, or like just generally, I think that's already kind of a genre a little bit. Is this like embezzling money by intentionally dragging feet on civic work projects or something? No, he like, what he does is he'll like take some development from like, the part where I'm at right now is around like episode 60 of the webtoon. Yeah, Dr. Stone would be one of them. Reincarnated as a slime has some elements as well. But yeah, he basically takes like modern inventions, like or like semi-modern inventions that he can make happen. Like his latest project is building a giant apartment building with radiators and stuff. And then he uses that because he's the only one who knows how to do this stuff, because he's from a modern world with technology instead of magic. He makes a whole bunch of money because he's the only one who's able to build these things. Yeah, that's his plan. He just like is objectively improving the quality of life of everybody around him because they pay him the big bucks to do it. I love how isekai's gotten so oversaturated that they've started doing the most unhinged premises in order to stand out. Yeah, oh god. Yes. Dr. Tangent, shut up. Reincarnated as a Slime annoyed me by doing too much power fantasy stuff. I did end up dropping Reincarnated as a Slime. The first season was good, but then it got too, like, the character got too OP and it just kind of felt, like, stagnant or stale. Oh my gosh. Droom Cry. I don't know how to feel about that, but maybe I'll check it out. Maoyu, but it's not an isekai. One of the characters has access to the outer library. There's a lot of shows in manga like that. I'm forgetting the name of one I'm thinking. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Hello, Mr. Kitty. Mr. Kitty has come to visit us. He is beautiful as he is majestic. Mylan, what's the name of the civil engineer show? It's not a show. It's a webtoon that's based off of it's a webtoon based off of the web novel, I think. It's called The Greatest Estate Developer. The Greatest Estate Developer. Oh, I must pet the cat? Okay, I'll pet the cat. Mr. Kitty! Mr. Kitty! Mr. Kitty! Mr. Kitty, the people want me to pet. You're such a good boy. Sorry, he ran away. Yeah, I got real small because he ran away and I had to run after him to go give him the pets that he deserved. Meow! 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 Yeah, he's a picky young man. He does not like being pet. He's a good boy, though. He's the smartest man in the world. The outer library or exterior library contains a vast archive of knowledge from various times and alternate universes. The Demon Queen is a bookworm. Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. Maybe I'll check that out. Okay, anyway, we were reading the paper. We were reading the paper like responsible people that we... Hello, Mr. Kitty, I love you. Oh my goodness, this little guy. He's the most vicious man on earth. He requires tribute, because he's a good little man. Little kitties are full of viciousness and ruthlessness, and they will devour the world. We were reading a paper, I swear. I swear. Okay. Well, past results support a relationship between transportability and immersive tendencies and identification for narrative video games. The effect of immersive tendencies in the context of interactive narratives, like interactive fiction, remains to be studied. Oh, so they haven't actually... looked at immersive tendencies in interactive fiction, which is interesting because they were saying immersive tendencies. No, I guess they're talking about narrative transportation. This is very interesting. I don't know. How far have we gotten in an hour and a half? We're on page 3, but we're still in the introduction. But we're on page 3, okay? And the pages are like double columned and stuff. So like, it's not like we're just like taking an hour and a half to get to the abstract, okay? Like we're in the introduction. We're like almost through the introduction. We're towards the end of the introduction. So you know what? I think that we're doing pretty well. Frankly speaking. Frankly speaking. Praise me. Praise me. For I have read a decent amount, even though I keep getting sidetracked. I am actually the king and champion of reading papers. I still hold the record of the fastest words per minute in all of V-Theorem. I am a god among men. Thank you, Tyler. I'm gonna get struck by lightning in like half a second. Good thank you. Can confirm the amount is decent. Hell yeah. See? I'm the best. I am so good at what I do. They should give me another PhD. They should. Frankly. I'm just saying they should give me another PhD. And you'd call me Dr. Mylan PhD. Or Dr. Mylan. Or Dr. Mylan. The lightning antlers or lightning rods Mylan will be safe? Doesn't that make me less safe? Doesn't that make me less safe? Because the antlers don't have grounding outside of a PhD in Yap? It's possible. Give me a PhD in Yap, please. Give me a PhD in words per minute, please. What would your second PhD be in? Words per minute. I do want to do another PhD in human-computer interaction, but anyway. Not Dr. Ackerman. I guess you could also call me Dr. Ackerman. You can call me that. Dr. Mylan, Dr. Ackerman. Dr. Mylan, Dr. Ackerman. If I get 2 PhDs, call me Dr. Mylan, Dr. Ackerman. It's true. Safe from not being struck. Yay! I will never have to worry about not getting hit by lightning ever again! Akamon, Digimon name? Digivolve into Sliderock Volter! This is my baby form! Dr. Mylan, Dr. Akamon, PhD. It's true. This is exactly my name. Call me by my full name from now on. Sakura Akamano. Okay, we're reading. We're getting sidetracked. We're reading the paper. We're going to read the paper. We're going to do it. We're gonna do it. We're reading the paper. Will past results support a relationship between transportability... Transportability? I'm guessing that an immersive wait, what's the difference between narrative transportability and immersive tendencies? Aren't those the same thing? If you have 2 PhDs and I eat an apple, does that keep you away from... I'm a not different kind of doctor. The apple doesn't work on that. You know, teachers like apples, right, Alex? Doctors are kept away by the apple. Medical doctors. Academic, like, doctors of philosophy. It doesn't work on us. Have the different cryptids not been Mylan evolving? That's exactly it. I've been evolving. You can also think of them as regional forms, though, if you want. Though I don't know how that works. I was thinking there's a slash next to concepts as if interchangeable. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's probably it, Marlon. You're right. They're probably treating it as interchangeable because of the slash. That should have occurred to me. I think I've been too distracted. What keeps PhD doctors away? Good question. I don't know. 15 words per minute. Ouch. Okay, alright, I gotta step up my game a little bit. That's a little painful. Finally, users' gender and age may also be of importance in identifying with media characters. Hypothesize that diverse demographic variables may influence the identification process by eliciting feelings of similarity between the user and media character. So the idea being that presumably they're saying it's easier for us to identify with a character that has similar demographic characteristics to us. I'm less likely to identify with Naruto, because Naruto is Japanese and like 12 at the start of the story or whatever. But I'm more likely to identify with Higuruma from Jujutsu Kaisen because he's roughly the same age as me, maybe. The ethics council, both the fastest and slowest in V theorem. Don't worry. Psy is V theorem emeritus, and so I can still be not the slowest. But if you only count, like, members that aren't emeritus, then maybe I am both the fastest and slowest, I don't know. I've got that variability to me. My standard error is quite high. Okay. Only a few contradictory results exist. Some showing no connection, presumably between identification and stuff. While others imply that females identify more strongly with their own genders, males identify with either. I would have predicted the opposite, actually, that women would identify more with all genders and men would identify only with men. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking of, like, people playing... People... Well, I guess, I don't know, actually, now that I think about it. Like, when you see which, like... When you're playing Pokemon and stuff, like, which player character you pick, a lot of people just pick the girl player character because there's more outfit and customization options, which is totally valid. What is it, Mr. Kitty? Are you full of viciousness and ruthlessness and violence? He might be. This is the nature of a carnivorous young man. Okay. All right, study objective. We're finally at the end of the introduction, everybody. On one hand, past research is characterized by heterogeneous definitions and operationalizations of key construct. Some show no connection. Cohen seems pretty odd to say. Yeah, that's fair. I have seen claims that the group generally highest in position of power tend to be more ambivalent, but I can't back that up beyond it. Yeah, I guess I was thinking about, like, clothing, like avatars and characters as clothing, where it's more, like, it's seen as more socially acceptable for women to dress in a masculine manner because, perhaps because, like, masculinity is the sort of higher, you know, like, as opposed to men dressing in a more feminine manner. I was kind of thinking of it in that way, and then using that, like, clothing as a sort of, like, mental metaphor for identifying with a character, but I don't know. The female trainer used to have more customization options, but now they give everybody mostly the same unisex options. That's true. That's true. That's true, Arctelos. Which I am a fan of that. Mr. Kitty, what do you do? This little man is full of energy and mischief, giving men the same number of customization options by taking away my dresses. They did have skirts, at least, in the latest game. I wanted, like, gender neutral. I was actually kind of annoyed. I wanted gender neutral clothing for my character. I wanted, like, they had this really cool, like, waistcoat with, they fully removed gender locking in ZA as far as I know. I wanted the waistcoat one, the sort of, like, vest with the collared shirt under it, and I was hoping it would look pretty gender neutral, but then they gave it, like, puff sleeves, and I was like, oh, I don't want to wear this. It has puff sleeves. What are they called? Is princess sleeves the word? I should know this. Like, I've done enough sewing that I should know the technical terms for these things. There's a fun comic about gendered and gays outfits in video games, and Final Fantasy XIV just gives everyone every option. I love that. It didn't used to be like that, right? I remember my friends getting excited because now, like, certain things weren't gender locked or something. Maybe it was like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to play Final Fantasy XIV. I saw the copy-paste pasta about, like, free up through storm whatever, and it just pissed me off so much, and my reactants activated so heavily that I'm never going to play Final Fantasy XIV. I refuse to touch it, and if anyone suggests it, I will bite them. We do need to embrace men in dresses. I agree. Gender-neutral clothing these days versus, like, specifically male clothing? That's a great question, Marlon. I don't really think there is a distinction, unfortunately. I have a lot of feelings about it, but I don't know. I'm very influenced by Doctor Who, so I can find the longest coat I can. Very fair. RuneScape let men wear the plate skirts from the start. Nice. Oh, there's a cat. Okay. I've also considered MMOs to be too much of a time sink. Yeah, I have this problem where, like, I don't play too many video games. With the games that I do play, I get, like, super into them, and I sink a lot of time into them. I recently turned off the ability for other people to see which video games I'm playing on Discord because people kept calling me out for spending all of my time on Minecraft and Umumusume, so now they don't know. So now you can't see when I'm playing them or not because that's just how I roll. I don't play many video games, but the ones that I do, I go hard, and therefore I'm reluctant to pick up new video games because I know if it catches me, I'm not going to do anything else for a long time. Right. What have I done? I've done horrible things. Okay. On one hand, past research is categorized by heterogeneous definitions and operationalizations of key constructs. In other words, people are using the same language in a lot of the past research, but they're using the same words, but they're using them as if they have different meanings, and then they're measuring the same things in different ways. Measuring the same things in different ways is not necessarily a problem. I think the bigger problem here is they're using the same words for potentially different things. That strikes me as the biggest issue. And on the other hand, it suffers from lack of comparability of findings due to use of different media. I would consider this not necessarily a huge problem because it's just checking if effects are generalizable. You can find out, do they work? Does this effect work in every context? Or do we only appear to find it if we're using, say, interactive fiction versus a video game versus a movie versus a short story or whatever? With varying confounds, influence of customization, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, if you change the media... Yeah, like, on one hand, I get it. It's like, it hurts the internal validity, that is, the ability to establish that any effects that are found are not because of confounds, but I think it improves the external validity. A nitpick of interactive fiction being a subtype of video game. Very fair, very fair. What is academia but nitpicking at each other ad infinitum? When studying identification also, the downfall of using video games when studying identification are the manifold factors that may potentially influence character identification and hence impede validation of according theoretical models of identification. It's basically, video games are too complex, there's too many variables in there, it's hard for us to establish what exactly is going on because there's so many things happening here. Hence, the current study set out to examine the postulated associations. Now you're just using big words to sound smart. You don't need to say postulated. You could just use hypothesize. That's still a big word, and it's probably more accurate to what you're doing. Sorry, I'm just being snarky. They're fine. They're fine. Hence, the current study set out to examine the postulated associations in a text-based fiction with purported interactivity. Purported interactivity! So are they gonna go the route where it's like the but thou must thing, where like they give the players a choice, but it doesn't actually change anything? Purported interactivity. Ooh. Okay. It was hypothesized that users' immersive tendencies, their experience of actual transportation into the narrative, and the interactivity of the narrative, active versus passive, would predict identification with the narrative's main character. Moreover, we included gender and age as possible predictors of identification to test their influence. So kind of just gender and age were more exploratory variables. The main thing they thought was how invested you get in the narrative, how likely are you to just get sucked into narratives in general, and whether you were able to interact with the narrative or not. All right, methods. So here's the main characters. Did they match the gender of the character to the... Wait, you said interactive fiction doesn't have images, right? Does it have no images at all, or like... Well, let's see what they say. An interactive fiction was created using Twine, which is an open source software allowing programming of interactive games. I think you need two controls because you have a choice, but not really. Damages my investment in the narrative more than not having a choice. As long as the... I get what you mean, Torg. I think the main concern is not necessarily whether... Oh, some Twines have images. Yeah, older ones don't. Okay. All right. I think the main concern isn't necessarily whether you have a real choice, yes or no. It's whether you think you had a choice, yes or no. So as long as the participants think that their choice mattered, as long as the participants feel like their choice actually affected something, it doesn't actually matter as much if it actually did affect something, is kind of the idea. They would probably want to check at the end to see if participants thought that the choice affected anything or realized that it was having no effect, assuming that's where they're going. But what matters more is what participants think is happening as opposed to what's actually happening. Because we're studying psychological phenomena here, right? We're studying what's going on in your head. So what you think is reality as far as your mental experience is concerned, to an extent, you know? So as long as they don't realize it, we're fine. This game is used for the study was purely text-based, yet throughout its course, a static picture of the main character was visible on the right-hand side of the... I'm curious about why they used a picture. Like, did they need to use a picture? I feel like that's almost making it harder for people to identify as the character, because if you don't know what the main character looks like, it feels like it would be easier to project yourself onto that character as opposed to if you have an image of the main character. A game trying to make me feel like my choice matters runs the risk of me noticing and introducing friction to the experience. Yeah, I agree. I'm assuming that this was a short game, so there was less opportunity to figure it out just because of the constraints of running a study, you know? So it would be less obvious. Like, I feel like it's easiest to figure out if your choices don't matter. One, if you can play the game multiple times and try multiple choices, that's like the easiest way to find out. But also, like, the more choices you have, the more likely you are to notice whether your choice matters or not. But if it's just like say you only have one or two choices, maybe some people will notice, but I think it makes it less likely that they'll notice. All right, here's the images they used for the main character. The IF was created for the purpose of the study included a murder case, which was told from a first-person perspective. So they're using first person of a detective who was called on the scene to interrogate potential suspects. Total word count, yeah. So it's a fairly short game, only 3,490 words. I don't know how long interactive fiction games typically are, but like in terms of like if I'm looking for a fanfic to read or something, 3,490 is pretty quick. I could read that like pretty quickly. So this wasn't a long game. Game was activated via link, was adapted to run on all standard browsers. I really don't mind games not making your choices matter, but I really hate when 99% of the choices don't matter, then a random set do. I'm sorry, Astral, you wouldn't like Fate Grand Order. But though at least Fate Grand Order, like, if you try and skip a scene, it will let you skip all the choices that... It's like Musume. Like, it will let you skip all the choices that don't matter, but it will stop you when there is a choice that matters, so you can tell which choices do matter. You'd already expected you wouldn't? Aww. I've been playing it for over a decade now, Astral. It's a good game. I don't know. I like it anyway, but my taste in media can be questionable. In the active condition, participants were instructed that they would be playing a game as a detective whose goal was to successfully solve a murder case. Also, participants were told that to achieve this goal, they would have to make several decisions that should critically influence the outcome. In contrast, participants in the passive condition were asked to read the story about a detective solving a murder case. In both conditions, participants were provided with the detective's last name, Kummer? With his static portrait. Each participant was randomly assigned either to the story with the male main character or to the one with the female main character. So they varied the gender of the character. I'm still not entirely sure why they used pictures of the character or why they varied the gender. Maybe to wash out any gender effects of the character themselves. But then they're not washing out other things like age effects or race effects of the character. Or like attractiveness effects or whatever else. I don't know. I'm just very curious about this choice and don't feel like they've really explained why they made it, if that makes sense. Overall, the course of the narrative was comparable in both conditions, with all subjects ending up reading all information and arriving at the same end of the story where the detective arrests the murderer. The only difference was that participants in the passive condition clicked on a continue button. Participants in the active condition could choose from 1 to 3 options. So they do have choices. Apparently it's German surname meaning sorrow. Ooh. Interesting. I love when we get into name meanings. That's always a fun thing. As such, the active condition included real active choices, whereas the passive condition did not. Hence, there was a factual difference between the two conditions regarding the interactivity of the medium. This was in line with the assumption that while classical text-based narratives are passively consumed, interactive narratives entail active engagement. Presenting the same plot and ending across conditions allowed us to reduce possible interfering influences of Okay, but like, was there any differences in the plot depending on the choices? Button options rather than verbs the user needs to know to type. Yeah, I think that makes sense because like you don't want people like looking up tutorials and stuff to figure out what verbs they can use when they're doing a scientific study, right? Because that could introduce like potential confounds and weirdness, right? The method commonly used in studies in field of interactive fiction. Overall, participants had to click continue or choose from different options 24 times. So that's a pretty decent number of choices. I wouldn't expect there to be a tutorial. Yeah, otherwise people get lost. Yeah, especially because I'm assuming that their participants probably aren't people who usually play interactive fiction games, is what I'm gonna guess. Yeah. Yeah, choices in the interactive version, so they didn't actually pay attention to the choices that were made. But what I still want to know, did the choices actually change what they see? I know it didn't change the ending, and it didn't change the overall plot, but did they receive different information depending on the choices they made, or were they false choices? Because it's sounding like the choices did actually affect something, so how much? Because I feel like if you're getting a slightly different story, yeah, the ending's the same and the overall plot's the same, but if you're seeing, say, different events or different character interactions in the story, that feels like a confound. And they don't really, I get, maybe they'll tell us more in the procedure section. If a Twine game needs a tutorial, it was built wrong. I see. To assess whether there are any differences between the male and female images in terms of attractiveness, sympathy, and estimated age, and to evaluate whether interactive narrative was engaging, and the passive-active condition were perceived as such, a pre-study was conducted. So they piloted it. They tested it out first with 10 young adults between 25 and 30 who were randomly assigned to either the male or female character or to either act. That's not enough statistical power to find significant differences in some of these things, I'm guessing. Like, pilot studies are going to be small just due to limited resources and stuff. But, like, that's just not adequately powered to find differences if there are differences. Yeah, it's Twine. There were no significant differences, of course, because there's not a lot of statistical power. In how the male and female avatars were evaluated. Both were estimated to be about 25 to 30 years old. Both were reported to be equally attractive and sympathetic. Also, the main character's gender was always correctly identified by all pre-study participants. With regards to the two narratives, the active condition, like, I feel like this only matters if you think that the gender of the main character is going to matter. Like, did they control for that? If so, like, if they don't think it's a predictor, why would you vary it? I don't know. I just don't understand why they did this necessarily. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe this is like the standard way that interactive fiction studies are run, because it sounds like this is a whole like type of area or type of methodology. I don't know. I just don't understand why that's there. But maybe that's just because I'm an outsider, right? Like I'm not, this isn't my area, so maybe there's just they're just assuming that anybody who's reading this is in this area, and this is just like standard practice, and then I came in and ruined everything with my ignorance. With regards to the two narratives, the active condition was judged as more interactive, and participants stated they had the impression they could influence the outcome of the story and the main character's decisions. So people in the active condition felt like they were influencing the outcome, even though the outcome was the same across conditions. Procedure, the study was administered in 2 stages to avoid bias due to asking about behaviors and assessing them in the same session. Stop being ignorant, shaking my head. Shaking my head. Shaking my head. Oops. Okay. All self-report questionnaires were administered via social science survey. So the first part of the study was demographics. The second part was doing the story and after measures. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Oh yeah, I did put my eye bags on. SMH shaking my horns. It's true. I was like, did my eye bags not work? They did work. That's right, I have eye bags on this model, by the way. And I can also do this. Those are the only 2 toggles I have on this one. The experiment was carried out in strict accordance with the Code of Ethics of the World Medical Association, Declaration of Helsinki. Awesome. Participants were informed about the procedure, duration, purpose of the study, as well as voluntary participation and anonymization. Had to consent. Okay, so ethical study. They didn't do anything shady. Love to see it. Love to see it. Eye bags for every model. It's so important. Would it even be myelin without them? No. The eye bags are part of my soul. Subsequently, participants were asked to provide their email address as means of an opt-in question, which they had to confirm in an email sent to them to ensure data. Why did they need the emails? Oh, is it because they were doing a two-part study, so they needed to follow up the email? Maybe? Boom. So this is one of the things. So a colleague greeted me, Mr., Mrs. or Mr. Why is the woman character married? Come with me, I'll show you the body, but, well, maybe this is just a translation thing, because the game was in German. Do German honorifics distinguish marital status? I don't know. I don't speak German. I'm kind of curious. Maybe they're both married? It could be, yeah. But, like, you wouldn't... Mr. has no indication of marital status. Mrs. indicates marital status. But also... Herr X versus Frau X. Okay, but does it have that for men as well? Does German distinguish marital status for men with honorifics? Because then, like, there's an information asymmetry between the two, right? Like, there's an additional aspect. No, that's male versus female. Oh, okay, so they don't. So this Mr. Mrs. Oh, have a good night. So this Mr. Mrs. is probably just a translation thing. This wasn't actually, like, they weren't actually indicating that the woman protagonist was married. This is just translation. Yeah. Okay. All right. Never mind. My concern is gone. Frau and Freilin. Yeah, I wonder if they do... Fraulin. Yeah, I do wonder if they gave us that information in the supplement, like they showed the original German. If we cared enough, we could go and check that if it's in there. I wasn't aware that Mrs. implies marital status. Yes. Fraulein. Yeah. Mrs. Yeah. So Mrs. is specifically for married women. Not really used. Oh, fair. Yeah. Yeah. Miss is sort of agnostic to married women, to whether the woman's married or not. Mrs., though, is specific to married women. Yeah. Fraulein. Okay. Participants were informed about the procedure, duration, and purpose of the study, as well as voluntary participation and anonymization, and had to consent to these terms before proceeding. Oh, right, we already read that. I got distracted reading this. I don't think it's common to indicate Fraulein in formal communications. Fair enough. Okay. After confirming their email, participants were automatically redirected to the first part of the study, answered the pre-questionnaires, which is the demographic stuff. Took 2 to 5 minutes afterwards. They were asked to generate a personalized 6-digit code to allow for matching their answers during the second stage. That would have allowed them to link the demographic information to the later information without linking any potentially identifying information like email addresses to the responses. So this is how they're keeping their participants anonymous. 4 days after the completion of the pre-assignment, a link was sent to participants via email, leading them to the interactive fiction. The link was valid for 2 days to ensure everybody was had a similar gap between their demographic questions and when they completed the study. Then they were followed by questionnaires. So they did the interactive fiction, took about 20 to 25 minutes to get through the whole story. Then they did post-questionnaires, and then they were asked to enter their code so that they could link it to the demographic data. And also, oh, cool, they did a nice thing here, which is they gave participants the opportunity to see their results on the study, which is not a common thing. I think it should be common, because I think at least some participants are usually interested in that. I've had participants ask me to tell them their results on studies before, and I wasn't able to because it was anonymous. So I was like, I have no way to contact you, or at least no way to link your contact information to your results, so I can't. I felt kind of bad. But people really do. That's why personality tests online are so popular. Like, people like taking tests and then learning things about themselves. And I have heard, like, to some extent, some researchers have used that to, like, incentivize people to take studies. There's various websites that collect data for research where, like, they incentivize you to collect data not by paying you for participating, but by, like, showing how your results compare to other people who took the same study and stuff. And people seem to like that. I think that should be more common practice, frankly. Anyway, demographic data. They also have, like, reading and computer games. Video games can sometimes force you to actually confront making hard decisions. True. Adherence check to control. So, like, so basically an attention check, making sure that they're actually paying attention to the story. Especially if you're invested in the world and the characters and care what happens. Yeah. And it could just be fun, like, seeing, like, what choice other people made, right? I imagine people would be interested in that, and you can probably use that as, like, a reward for participating in the study. Like, you can see how your performance or your choices compared to what choices other people made. And I imagine people would find that interesting. Immersive tendencies. So they use something called the immersive tendencies questionnaire to measure this. Translate into German, back translation. So back translation, this is a method to make sure that a questionnaire or a survey or, like, a scale doesn't change too much when you translate it. It sounds like this measure was originally not in German. They translated it into German, and then to make sure that because, like, translating is very difficult. Most languages do not have, like, one-to-one translations. It's not possible. Different words have, like, different connotations and things like that, or different, like, that kind of thing. Kind of like what happened with the misses up here. They probably translated something that didn't indicate marital status into something that did have marital status because maybe they weren't aware of the difference in connotation. So the back translation method is you take the original scale, then you translate into whatever language you're doing, in this case German, but then you translate it from you have a different translator translate it from German back into the original language to make sure that the German translation still has the same meaning, or at least as close of a meaning as possible to the English translation. It's kind of like running something through Google Translate multiple times. If you translate something into German, from English to German and then back to English, you need to make sure that the meaning hasn't changed. Like, if the meaning has changed, that's an indication that maybe you've changed what the questionnaire is measuring, and it's a problem. That's the back translation method, sort of, like, oversimplified. The first 14 out of 18 original items were included, which assess individual predisposition to become immersed in a narrative on an 8-point Likert scale. 8 points, that's pretty non-standard. Interesting. The mean score on our scale... Ew, they summed it! I don't like it. I wish they'd taken the mean. That's easier for me to interpret. Oh, I see. Why'd you let me miss your chibi debut? Hey, Mori, how you doing? There wasn't really a debut. I just kind of started the stream as normal, just using this model. There was no special debut. Letting the translation change the meaning is so fun, though. That's true, but it's problematic for research, especially if you want to compare results across cultures and stuff. It's true, I'm Bunny. I'm a bunny. I'm Bunny, Bunny, Bunny. I got the ears and everything. Why would they do that? Some? I don't know. I feel like the mean is pretty standard. I wish they'd done the mean, because then I could see where the mean is along, like, the 8-point Likert scale. Like, were people leaning more towards never? Were they leaning more towards always? But now I need to do math to figure that. I don't want to do math to figure that out. I don't like doing math. Just do the average for me. Fine. Okay. The first 14 out of 18. So the mean was 63.79 divided by 14 questions. So the mean was 4.55. So around the midpoint of the scale. About halfway between never and always. Okay. The internal consistency for the total scale was good with alpha of 0.81. That means all of the questions were asking about roughly the same thing. Mean is left as an exercise to the viewer. Hey, Water Knight, how are you doing? Yeah, they're making me do math homework. I don't know how I feel about being made to do math homework when I'm trying to read an academic paper. I think that's highly I think that's very rude of them. Just so you know. Usually I have a Python console I pull up whenever I do simple number crunching. Sometimes I'll do that in R. But alpha's 0.05? Yeah, alpha's 0.05. This is a different alpha. And this is specifically, so alpha 0.05 is just plain alpha. This is something called Cronbach's alpha. It's different from that alpha. Cronbach's alpha is kind of like, you can think of it a bit like a correlation, except it's like cross correlations between all 14 of the items. It's looking to see how correlated all 14 of the questions are with all of the it's just taking all of these questions and correlating them all with each other to make sure that a good scale, all of the questions on the scale should be highly correlated with each other. This is indicating that that if I answer high on question 1, I'm also answering high on question 2, which is good because all 14 questions are supposed to be measuring the same thing. So if you're high on one, you should be high on another. That's the idea. Oh, no, you're good, Tyler. And like, I also didn't know if you were making a joke, so I was doing my usual thing of like, I don't know if you're joking, so I'm just going to explain it as if you're serious. But yeah, it is kind of confusing that we use alpha to refer to multiple things. It's kind of annoying. Mm-hmm. If it just said alpha, you'd be right. So did you send these results to participants to be alpha male? Torg, why are you doing this to me? Torg. I'm just a little guy. I'm just a little guy and it's my birthday. Please be nice to me, Torg. Just a little guy and it's my birthday. Petition to change the statistical mean to the statistical nice? What would that be? I'm very curious. I'm very curious what the statistical nice would be. Happy it's not my birthday, Torg. I'm sorry. I'm quoting like a Reddit story. It's not my birthday. I'm quoting a Reddit story. It's the guy who it's like this girlfriend whose boyfriend would always go to like bars and get in fights with people and like start fights, but just when they were about to like the other guy was about to punch the guy, the boyfriend would go like, I'm just a little guy and it's my birthday. You wouldn't punch a little guy on my birthday. And apparently it worked every time. I quote that way too much for my own good. I'm just a little guy and it's my birthday. 50-50, it's either your birthday or isn't. Yes, that's how probability works, surely. Surely that's how probability works. Oh my goodness. It's a good image. I'm just a little guy. I'm just a little guy. All right, transportation. German version of the transportation narrative questionnaire. Assess the extent to which participants were transported and absorbed by the narrative using 15 questions. What's the alpha on this? See, again, they didn't. So this is on a 7-point Likert scale, which is more standard. Cronbach's alpha of 8.4, so it had good reliability. And we use the finals. Why are they summing it? You can't explain your way out of this. Your birthday is canonically March 12th now. My birthday is November 15th. My birthday is November 15th. Put it in the Discord for anyone who wants to see. I don't know what's happening anymore. I'm just a little guy. And it's my birthday and you're bullying me. I'm being very attacked right now. Okay. Full scale also included 4 items pertaining to the impression of the participants had of 4 characters appearing in the murder case. November 15th is a weak birthday. March is... You're wrong. You're wrong, Astral. You're wrong. I don't know how to tell you, so you're wrong. Setting Mylan's birthday to be constantly be +1 second from now, so they age a year every second. Why are you doing this to me, Marlon? In less than a minute, I'm simply going to be dust. Why would you do this to me? I'm not going to finish the paper. I'm already disintegrating by the second as I age and my bones become weak, and I eventually... Old age happens to me, and I become weak, and my bones crumble into dust. Oh, happy early birthday, Tyler! I'm back. I'm back. You have revived me by talking about how it is almost your birthday. Happy early birthday, Tyler. Okay. Setting my on birthday constantly plus 1 second for now so they unage a year every second. Thank you, Tyler. Oh no, Tyler, what have you done? What have you done? As I unage every second, I am rapidly going back in time until before I was born, and now I no longer exist. Oh no. Oh, happy early birthday, Astral. That's really exciting. Happy early birthday. Oh, everybody's growing older. I don't know why I blamed you. I meant to blame Marlin, but something happened. Benjamin Button. I don't know what's happening to me anymore. I'm just aging all over the place. It's horrible. Dust in either direction. It's true. Data analyses. They did an
SPSS. Ugh. Ugh. SPSS. Ugh.
Okay, I'm kidding.
No wonder they use the sum instead of the mean. They're using SPSS.
Okay, I'm done. I'm done being a little brat. It's fine. They use p is less than 0.05, so their alpha was 0.05. What is that? SPSS is a statistical analysis program. It was the most commonly used analysis program in psychology, as far as I know, about 10 years ago, but it's like a point-and-click program. It's owned by a major company, and you have to pay like a whole bunch of money to get a software license for it. It's very expensive. And also, it was doing follow-up tests for ANOVAs wrong for a very long time. They only fixed it in the past, like, 5 years or so. So that was unfortunate. It was using the wrong error term to follow up ANOVAs, and it's just not as flexible as some other things. I just prefer R. And R is kind of the new standard in psychology these days. SPSS is just kind of like, not a lot of people use it anymore. Because it's less flexible and also it's really expensive, whereas R is free. Yeah. Power calculations were performed using G-Power. G-Power is so funny to me because, like, it looks like it was made a long time ago, and it looks like it was made a long time ago, but a lot of people still use it. Aggregated data are stored in the repository on Open Science Framework.
So we can view their data on OSF. They've publicly shared their data. It is very kind of them. We do love it when they share their data. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Right. Sample! German Facebook pages and groups, as well as gaming-related German-speaking online forums. So some of their participants were gamers. Inclusion criteria were at least 15 years of age. Interesting. Do they have, like, a lower, like... So, like, in the US, you have to be 18 to be able to provide informed consent. Is the age for informed consent for, like, participating in studies and stuff lower in Germany? G-Power sounds like a thing Google would say their search engine runs on. You're so right. Exclusion criteria were participants in the pre-evaluation... or participation in the evaluation of the previous. So they people who did like the pilot test where they were testing out their material could not participate in the main study. Pre-assessment was completed by 424 individuals and 304. So they lost like 120 people between demographics and the actual study. That's not a bad attrition rate. You know, like doing 2-part studies like this, you're usually going to lose like half your sample or something like that. And I feel kind of guilty because there have been many times when I completed time 1 of a study and then I just never did time 2, so I am part of the problem. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the researchers that I did that to. I'm sorry. I know I did a bad thing. I'm sorry. Among the 304 datasets, they excluded 67 because they didn't remember their PIN from before and after. So they couldn't match the demographics to the data. After excluding datasets with missing responses, about 20% missing, or conspicuous response patterns, like always choosing the same response in all the Likert scales, as well as with outliers. So their final sample size is 228. Passwords are hard. Yeah, I was like thinking when they said they had them do a 6-digit like code, I was like, how many of them are going to remember that 6-digit code when it comes to the actual study? Like, Yeah, I was a little concerned about that. And it looks like that was indeed an issue, which is unfortunate. Um, so here's like here's the flow chart of like how many people they eventually got in each condition. So this is left is the interactive condition with a sample size of 122 in the interactive condition and a sample size of 106 in the non-interactive condition. It also depends on if they put the web form together, so I'd let the browser store retrieve the pass number. That's true. That's true. Like, could people let their browsers remember their pass number for them, or they have to remember them themselves? Plus, whether the user had the presence of mind to jot down the exactly. Like all of this stuff, I think, are factors, which might be an interesting thing of like the attrition was not. There's a couple interesting things here. Sorry, I'm thinking about whether there might be a concern that there was differential attrition across conditions. Because it looks like they were randomized before they asked them for the follow-up codes. That's probably not an issue. Because, like, in some cases, there might be cases where people are... It's a problem called mortality. It's not actually dying. It's just that people tend to be more likely to drop out of one condition than another condition. And we do find that not quite twice the number of people in the non-interactive condition were lost due to not remembering the code relative to the interactive condition. So I'm not sure if that's like a confound or if it's just like randomness. I don't know. Like that's potentially a concern. It might also not be a concern. I don't know. I would probably need more information to figure that out. The adherence check show that all 228, so all 228 passed the attention check, which is great. That's really good. Participants' age was from 15 to 65, largest portion being 20 to 29. Overall, most participants are 74% were female, 26% identified as male. So this is a very women-heavy sample, which is interesting. Almost half the sample reported having a university degree as their highest qualification. In addition, 70% engaged in 2 or less hours of video gaming per day. 57 read 1 to 2 books per month. 23% read 5 books. 28% or 12% read more. A small number of participants, 8%, reported having read no books in the past month. So they break down the books one, but they don't break down the video games one. Like, what of that remaining 30%, how did that break down? I'm kind of curious. It's weird to me that, like, the study itself is essentially playing a video game, but they broke down their book reading, but not their video game playing. I guess there is more heterogeneity in the book reading based on, like, the biggest category here being 57% versus 70%. But I am kind of sad that they didn't break that down. To exclude the possibility that in one of the two conditions, despite randomization, there was disproportionately large accumulation of the following characteristics, group differences. Okay, it's good. So they did check to make sure that there was no, like, that the groups didn't end up different even after randomization. So they did an ANOVA. There was no difference in age between the two conditions. Wait, why are they doing an ANOVA when they only have 2... condition? Why didn't they just do it? Why does this keep happening? Why do I keep encountering situations where people have 2 conditions, but they do an ANOVA instead of a t-test? I don't understand. I don't understand. Why? This is like the second time in the past like 2 weeks this has happened to me where I've been reading a paper and they have 2 conditions and then they use an ANOVA instead of a t-test. Why? Fiend's funny name for losing participants is not allowed. Aw, boo. I don't tend to read many books. I usually read, like, articles, so I guess I also skim textbooks. I guess ominous or sad words tend to get caught by the filter. That's fair. Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. They're censoring academic discussion. Ah! But why use an ANOVA instead of a t-test? This is bugging me. Like, is there something that they know that I don't know? Or... Okay, this is bad. I'm kind of like... Well, they use the sum instead of the mean for a scale, and they're using SPSS instead of R in the year of... When was this published? This paper's from... Sorry. This paper's from 2023, and they're using SPSS instead of R, and they're using the sum instead of the mean, and then they used a t-test instead of... Or an ANOVA instead of a t-test when they had two conditions, which makes me kind of wonder how much they're in... Like, how much they know about statistics? I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. ANOVA's useful. That Astral, don't make puns at me. Don't make puns at me. Don't make puns at me, you horrible little ghost. You are being cruel and unusual, and I'm suffering for it. We are discussing serious science and methodology and statistics here. Why would... Exactly, Tyler. I genuinely don't know why they would use an ANOVA instead of a t-test. Like, I don't know. Mylan, you're making me notice the mistakes. If only they watched some kind of series of lectures on statistical techniques. I know, right? I know, right? If only. I feel almost like kind of gaslit though. Like, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm the wrong one? What if there is a reason to use an ANOVA here? I don't know what that reason would be. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. Based on what I know about ANOVAs and t-tests, this doesn't make sense to me. It's not like ANOVAs are more conservative than t-tests, at least to my knowledge. I could be wrong. Maybe they are. The only difference between an ANOVA and a t-test with two conditions, though, is how they're estimating mean differences. And t-tests do it by the distance between... by converting the difference between your two conditions into units of standard error. So it's looking at the mean difference, whereas an ANOVA is looking at variability. But in this case, it's the variability between two numbers, which is, why not just do a mean difference then? I don't understand. Probably not a one-sample t-test, because there's no population mean here. It would be an independent samples t-test, because they're looking at the means of two independent groups. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't understand. Also, the thing, like, I guess they're saying they don't have enough evidence to say that they're different in, say, age or education or computer habits or reading habits, but they're not. This doesn't show evidence that they're the same. That's not how null hypothesis testing works. So they're not saying these groups are the same, but they are at least saying we don't find any obvious differences. Sorry, meant independent brain fog. It's okay, Tyler. I have been so brain foggy today. Like, today, somebody asked me what classroom one of my classes was in, and I had been in that classroom less than 10 minutes before, and I told them the wrong room, confidently, multiple times. The brain fog is real. The brain fog is real. It happens to the best of us. I felt really bad about it, and I feel really dumb. And because that was like a senior colleague of mine, and they saw me say something that was just objectively, factually untrue, and now I'm really embarrassed, and I really hope that they didn't judge me and think I'm stupid. I don't know, the imposter syndrome is sitting... You'd think you wouldn't have imposter syndrome anymore after you get a PhD. You would be wrong. I have so much imposter syndrome all the time. But especially, it's gotten especially bad lately for some reason, I don't know. Anyway, where were we? Okay, concerning gender, there were marginally more male participants in the active condition than the passive one, which resulted in Yeah, don't say there were marginally more if it's not significant. You can't say there was a difference. Yeah, they did a chi-square test and a Wilcoxon rank sum test. Yeah, these aren't significant, so just say that there was no difference. You can't say marginally more male participants when there's no statistical significance to that. Or maybe I'm just being picky. I mean, like, the raw number of men versus women was higher. But, like, that's within the margin of error, is how I would describe it. So, personally, I would not have said that there was a marginally more men. I would have just said there wasn't a significant difference in gender. I don't know. Okay. Prior to multiple regression analysis, normality tests were performed and confirmed a normal distribution of included metric variables. Okay, cool. They're checking their assumptions to make sure that their data fits what the regression is expecting data to look like. Linear interrelationships between predictors and outcome, as well as homoscedasticity, were graphically verified, and the data met the assumption of independent errors for the Durbin-Watson value. Okay, so basically, they're making sure that the data is appropriate for a linear regression, and it is. It's not like really weird data that doesn't work with a linear regression. The centered leverage criterion and the Cook distance criterion showed no outliers after excluding 2 outliers prior to calculation of regression. So they used these to identify data that was highly unusual, and they excluded it from their analysis. Intercorrelations of the 3 included predictors range from negative 0.13 to 0.34. So they're looking at our predictor variables, which are the condition they were in, interactive or not, their general tendency to be immersed in fiction, and narrative transportation into this particular story. They're looking at the correlations between those. I'm willing to bet, maybe they'll tell us, but I'm betting the 0.34 is between general tendency to get immersed in narratives and narrative transportation, given that narrative transportation is immersion in this specific narrative. The data indicated that multicollinearity was not a concern. This is another like test of a, like, can we do a regression on this confidently, which is good. Show no outliers after excluding the outliers is, I'm sure, statistically meaningful, but it sounds really funny. Yeah, it is kind of funny, isn't it? And basically, the reason they're able to say that is because their definition of an outlier, which was somewhere up here, the way that they quantified outliers as far as removing outliers is concerned is different from the method that they use to detect outliers. So essentially, we excluded what we thought were outliers. Then we did a test to check if there were any outliers, and it looks like we successfully excluded anything that the test might consider outliers. They're basically checking their work, I would say. But it does sound pretty funny when they put it that way. But no, this is good statistical practice. This is very good statistical practice. A lot of people don't do this, so they are really covering their bases. They are doing good stats here. A multiple linear regression analysis method forced entry was used to test whether interactivity, active versus passive condition, narrative transportation, immersive tendencies significantly predicted participants' identification with the story's main character, as well as age and gender. It's not predicting age and gender, though, right? Age and gender were entered as control variables. I think this is just like kind of like fuzzy wording where it's not super clear, but I think I got what they're doing. Multiple regression analysis indicated that 67% of outcome variance was explained by the that is high. R squared of 0.67, that's explaining a lot of variance. Especially for like a social science thing, that is a big effect size for social science. Holy cow. That's really good. That's really impressive. What is that? Only 23% of the variance they couldn't explain? Like gender, education, interactivity, general tendency to feel narratively transported, and narrative transportation to the specific story accounted for 67% of why people differed and how much they identified with the main character. Of course it's a point. I didn't even notice, Arctellos. Why do you do this to me? Why do you do this to me? Of course it's a freaking 0.67. I just... We're so close to finishing the paper and you make me want to end the stream. I'm kidding, you're fine. Oh my god. This is the risk of working with numbers. The meme. Interactivity predicted identification. Okay, so first of all, their manipulation worked. So I'm going to create a section in my notes for the results. Results. What is 6.7? The effect size. The effect size. They explain 67% of the variance in identification with the main character from their predictor variables. Okay, so, feeling having an interactive story predicted higher... I'm guessing that's higher identification. I don't think they say how the interactivity was dummy coded, so I'm not sure if a negative... I don't know if this means interactivity predicted more identification or less identification, and they don't say, which is frustrating because they don't tell us how they dummy coded identification, I don't think, which means that I don't know how to interpret this, and they're not describing it in text. 6-7 is a meme that arose around some rap song that inexplicably got popular. 6-7 memes as a recession indicator versus the mean 2 larger than it. Oh my gosh. Marlon, please. Higher? Identification with the main character. But yeah, I wish that they would tell us what direction this... like, interactivity, how did you code it? Because I can't interpret this if I don't know how you coded it and you're not telling me what it means. So, like, there was a relationship, but I don't know what... There was a difference in whether the story was interactive or not in identification, but I can't tell what that difference was. Because they didn't tell us how they coded it. Do they tell us here? Okay, 1 is the active condition, 2 is the passive condition. Okay. All right, so in the notes in the table they do tell us. They do tell us. Beautiful, beautiful. Torg, do you also follow Gretchen McCullough on social media? Because I saw her making that metaphor exactly. All right, so having the interactive story predicted higher identification with the main character than the non-interactive story. Transportation, also, I follow nobody on social media. Fair, probably a safer way to do it. Okay. More narrative transportation was also associated with more identification with MC. More immersive tendencies also associated with more identification. Gender, though only barely significant, men were higher in identification. Skibidi Toilet really is Gen Alpha's Gmod. You are so right, Tyler. It is Gmod. Everybody's like, Skibidi Toilet, I don't get it. And it's like, buddy, you were laughing at Gmod videos 10 years ago. Like, what do you... 10, 15, 20 years ago. If you laughed at Gmod, you have no right to be judging Skibidi Toilet. Let's be freaking real. It is a good day to do what must be done by me. If you laughed at Half-Life Full Life Consequences, you cannot judge Skibidi Toilet. This is my rule. And of course, badger, 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 mushroom, mushroom. Anyway. I get it as a concept, I may not get itself. Yeah. Same time. You can judge that I can find it in shops. That's true, you wouldn't be able to find Half-Life Full Life Consequences in shops. That is fair. I'll give you that one, Astral. They did not make they're not making like a giant blockbuster movie of Half-Life Full Life Consequences, though frankly they should. Anyway. Age group did not show significant effects. Did they do age group instead of just age as a continuous variable? Why? That makes... I hate... It's like a research pet peeve of mine when people take continuous variables and make them into categories, especially if they theoretically measured them continuously and then turn them into categories. Why would you do that? I do like, kind of like the cultural heritage aspect of Gary's mod being a through line between Half-Life Full Life Consequences and Skibidi Toilet, right? It's kind of funny how that works. No relationship with age. Character gender did not matter. And no interaction? Is there no interaction in here? Did they test for an interaction? They didn't test for an interaction. What? Wait, what's this interaction is that... When character gender and interaction of character gender and participant gender. No interaction between character and own gender. So it's not like you identified more or less with the character depending on whether the character's gender matched yours or not. That doesn't appear to be a significant thing. It is kind of surprising to me that they did a regression, but they didn't look for interactions between their predictor variables outside of that. But I guess, like, if they have no theoretical reason to expect interactions with their predictor variables, fair play, I guess. Though I do wonder if immersion would interact with if the stories interacted to predict. I feel like you could predict interactions here. They did make their data publicly available in aggregate, so I wonder if it's granular enough for me to actually go in and reanalyze their data and test for the interactions. I wonder. Yeah, you'd think they'd check. It's possible they thought they didn't have the statistical power for it, which with a sample of like, what, 224 or something like that, it's possible that they just didn't have the statistical power to test for it, which is fair. I would still just check, you know? Like, I still just check, and maybe I will check. Maybe I can add that to my to-do list of things to do after the stream is go pull their data and see if there is an interaction there predicting identification with the character. Maybe I'll do that. More likely I'll go eat dinner, but, you know. Identification with fictional characters, be it in text-based narrative. Oh, let's look at the table. Here's their regression results. So intercept, you can ignore intercept. That doesn't mean anything special for us. Wait, are they using beta, standardized betas? Or, because here they're reporting it as if these are standardized betas. But here they're using B for estimate. Are these standardized or not? Are these the same things? Check it on stream, show us how it's done. I would need to like do some preparation to make sure that I don't dox myself through my file directories while I'm doing the analysis. Maybe in another stream when I've prepared a bit more, we can reanalyze the data from this, assuming that they're okay with that. I'd also have to check the copyright of the data to see if they'd be okay with me doing that. But yeah, maybe we could do that on another stream. That could be fun. I do want to analyze data on stream someday soon. It's been a long time since I did that, and I've always had fun with that. Okay, right, so there's your interactivity. Interactivity is 1 is the active condition, 2 is the passive condition. So higher numbers indicate they were unable to interact. For interactivity, and higher numbers for their dependent variable, which is identification with the main character, indicate more identification. So this negative relationship here indicates, oh no, okay, they've got the beta over here and then the estimate here. Okay, that makes more sense. So here's their standardized beta, which can be interpreted kind of like an effect size. So higher numbers in the standardized beta indicate a stronger relationship. The same is kind of true with the estimate as well, but the estimate isn't standardized, so it's not as comparable across a whole bunch of, it's not as useful for comparing across studies and data sets as a standardized beta is. Anyway, basically this is that effect that they talked about. The more people in the interactive condition identified more with the main character. If they were in the passive condition, they didn't identify as much. Here's their confidence interval. So the true estimate is probably between these two numbers. P-value. Immersive tendencies. This was a positive relationship, so the more likely you were to get immersed in a story, the more you identified with the main character, though this is not like a super... That's not like a super strong effect. Whether the story was interactive is doing a lot more work than whether you're likely to get immersed in stories in general. The thing that appears to be doing the most work here, because these are all controlling for each other's effects, because they're all entered into the same model, the thing that's the biggest predictor of identifying with the main character, the strongest predictor of identifying with the main character, is, were you immersed in this particular story? And I think that makes a lot of sense given that this story was in first person. I wonder if they would find different effects if the story was in second or third person, especially third person relative to first person. I don't know. And then, yeah, age group, like, your age did nothing. I don't know why. They reported the mean and standard deviation of age, didn't they? So if they had age as a continuous variable, why did they... No, they didn't. They reported the range, and then... Did they really measure age as age range instead of just age? That upsets me. That upsets me. I don't like when people do that. I don't like when people do that. Anyway. Basically, they're making it harder for themselves to find a significant effect by making it categorical because they're losing variance. If they had kept it continuous, they would have more variance, which would mean they'd be more likely to detect a relationship between age and identification with the character. Age group, this could be a type 2 error. This could be a false negative because they collected it that way, or it could be a true negative. I don't know. Age range always seems silly to me. I agree. I think age range, at least in terms of like research, I think age range is kind of silly. I would much rather they just use age. Gender, and there's their effective gender. It's a pretty small effect. Though to be fair, the immersive tendencies one is pretty small as well. All right. Identification with fictional characters, be it in text-based narratives, movies, or video games, is thought to be positively shape media persuasiveness, enjoyment, and learning. Hence, understanding what lies at the core of character identification is of interest, particularly to those applications that rely on successfully inducing identification for the promotion of social change and health behaviors. So basically, they're saying there are potential positive societal benefits if we can get people to identify with fictional characters. We can use that for good. Yet previous research largely suffers from limited cross-study comparability due to differing definitions of key constructs. So people are using the same words but different definitions for them. They're talking past each other, kind of. And due to the use of media with varying degrees of interactivity, and here they're showing that interactivity matters. So it is potentially a problem that we would expect differences in identification across different forms of media because interactivity does matter for identification. Hence, the current study set out to add to the body of evaluating the influence of media interactivity and user variables such as trait, immersive tendencies, gender, age, and factual transportation into the narrative on character identification in text-based fiction. Results show that apart from age, all predictors included in the linear regression model were significant. In other words, identification with the story's main character, Detective Kumar, was predicted by participant gender, their trait, immersive tendencies, experience, and transportation in the narrative, as well as the story's interactivity. And the strongest of all of these is narrative transportation. So narrative transportation was the most important thing. Interactivity is the second most important thing, but it's not really close. I was just ranting about talks about the lack of media literacy in some fandoms. I sure hope there's work done in making sure art doesn't go to waste on lazy takes. There's a lot of really interesting fandom stuff. I'm really looking into getting into fandom psychology, and actually a lot of the people that I'm going to invite on my channel are doing stuff related to media consumption and parasocial relationships with fictional characters and stuff like that. And I think you're really going to enjoy them, and I also really want to do more work like that. This is in response to using media interactivity in relation for good. Yeah. I think they also mentioned in the introduction that it could also be potentially used for bad. But I think this area is super interesting to me, and I'm excited that hopefully I should have at least one and hopefully more people in this area on the channel in the near future. And also I want to do work in this area because this stuff is super interesting to me, you know? Like I'm very excited about it. That sounds sick. I'm so tired of vocal parts of fandom missing the point of art. Me too. It's kind of like what you talking about this. I don't know if this is what you're talking to Toxo about, but it's reminding me of a lot of discourse about the latest Chainsaw Man Part 2 chapter. Like, we're nearly at the end of Chainsaw Man Part 2. I think there's only 1 or 2 chapters left of Chainsaw Man Part 2. And the most recent chapter, people are very upset about how it's gonna end. But also, the author, Fujimoto, in an interview, like a couple years ago, I think, kind of foreshadowed that it would be this kind of ending. And people are still very upset about it because they don't think the ending's satisfying. But Fujimoto kind of implied that the ending's going to be this for the art, like for the artisticness of it, but people are unhappy because they don't think the artistic vision is satisfying as an ending, kind of. It's definitely used for evil, e.g. the mediocre white man seeing those. Yeah, that's fair. I'm complaining about Has-Been Hotel and Amazing Digital Circus. Oh no. Hey, Maury! Final chapter's next. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Because, like, I knew that I saw it was coming in a couple of weeks, but my ability to convert dates into time is like, what is it? It's supposed to come out on, like, the 18th, I think? But yeah, there's not really much room for, like, the kind of ending that I think a lot of fans were hoping for, given that what has happened in the second to last chapter. Why does anyone actually assume anything about Chainsaw Man? I don't know. They should know better by now. They should really know better by now than to assume anything about Chainsaw Man. And frankly, I think they should have known better than to assume that we would have a satisfying ending. Like, I think that everything about Chainsaw Man so far, at least as far as I've been concerned, is that I have never had reason to think that the Chainsaw Man ending would be cathartic. And honestly, I think if we did get a cathartic ending for Chainsaw Man, that would be kind of antithetical to the whole of Chainsaw Man so far. I'm gonna laugh if we get Chainsaw Man 3. Me too. Fujimoto's just outdoing things, and I love that for Fujimoto. Fujimoto should just go out and just do things forever. People like feeling good, but good art makes you feel complicated. Yeah. Episode 7 of The Amazing Digital Circus was interesting in the ways that did and did not lampoon audience theories. Ooh, interesting. It is always interesting when, like, media is in direct conversation with theories about the media, in a way. If anything, why would the ending be cathartic? Exactly, Tyler! I don't think there's any reason to believe that the Chainsaw Man ending ever would be cathartic, or that it should be cathartic. Like, if we do get Chainsaw Man Part 3 and a cathartic ending, I'd be okay with that, but, like, yeah, I guess the Chainsaw Man Part 1 ending was cathartic. Okay, to be fair, Maury, you are right. I think the Chainsaw Man Part 1 ending was cathartic. I guess maybe I'm mostly thinking about Part 2. I never really thought that we were going to get a cathartic ending of Part 2, specifically. It didn't, I don't know. It didn't feel like that made sense to me. Because I think there was, like, kind of a clear villain in Part 1. Part 2, there is kind of a clear villain, but it's also a more complicated situation. It's not as clear-cut as, like, the antagonist of Part 1, due to various factors that I will not elaborate on here, because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's, like, anime only or whatever. But, yeah. I don't know. I will admit, I might not be the best person to commentate on Chainsaw Man, because I've never... Like, I'm up to date with the manga of Chainsaw Man, but I've never really been super invested in Chainsaw Man. It's, like, one of the things that I've been keeping up with, but it's not something that has ever really, really captured me. Monkey Paw Curls, you get Chainsaw Man Part 3 with a different writer because the studio wanted to satisfy it. We get an anime original ending. I know that there are some people really hoping that the Oshinoko anime gets an anime original ending, which is very funny to me, because this season of Oshinoko is making a very, very clear effort to make the ending of the manga feel more like it makes more sense. Like, in the manga, the ending, a lot of people were unhappy with it, and I think a lot of people were hoping for an anime original ending, but the anime is just going harder on it. It's throwing in more foreshadowing. It's really emphasizing the themes that the ending was emphasizing earlier on a lot stronger than the manga did. It's like, we're not getting an anime original ending for Oshinoko. They're trying to make the manga ending feel more fitting, and they're putting in a lot of very obvious effort into it. Are we gonna read Chainsaw Man on stream? I feel like that would be a copyright nightmare, so I'm not gonna. Sorry. It would be funny, though, to just, like, film my reaction to the final chapter of Chainsaw Man, but on the other hand, I don't think I'm invested enough in Chainsaw Man to have quite as amusing of an reaction as people might hope. But Fujimoto is really just out here writing stuff, and love that. Love that. Just doing things. Just, like, living some kind of life, and beautiful. Anyway, we're nearly done with this paper, so let's finish it. I want to finish this paper. I didn't think we would today, but I think we're going to, and therefore we have to, okay? The possibility to select from several choices within our text-based narrative positively and significantly impacted identification with the story's main character. This finding is in line with past studies, and it supports theoretical models like the conceptual model for interactivity effects and the moderated mediation model of media interactivity. Conceptual model of interactivity effects is like any interaction with characters predicts identification, or interaction with any character predicts identification. Moderated mediation model of media interactivity was specifically that being able to control the main character predicts identification with that character. So one of these is more general, the other is more specific, but both of them are supported by this. Essentially, if you support the moderated mediation model, you are going to support the conceptual model for interactivity effects, is my understanding, because the moderated mediation model is just like a more specific version of the conceptual model of interactivity effects, in my understanding from just reading this one paper. So I might be wrong about that, but that's kind of what I'm getting out of this. However, one issue remains. While media was factually interactive in that it afforded choices between different options, the storyline and outcome were the same across all conditions. So I'm still unsure. It did afford choices, so people could make a choice. I'm still unsure if that choice actually led to, like, I know it didn't change the overall story. I know it didn't change the overall ending. I'm still unclear on whether that choice did, like, give you maybe some different dialogue or something. I still don't know that, and I would very much like to know that. I wonder if they offer a link to play the game. That would be fun. The current results support the success of the manipulation, yet it's possible that some participants may not have believed their choices changed the story's outcome. Well, that's kind of the concern Torg was bringing up earlier. Future research should carefully control for whether and which participants may find out about the manipulation and react with frustration and or disappointment. Another issue is the question of whether... but I do want to say they did do a manipulation check, and they did find that the people in the interactivity condition did report. No, Torg, they did ask. They did ask. And the people in the interactivity condition did report like they felt they had control. So they said they felt they had control. I guess the main concern is maybe the participants were lying. They're like, oh, I know that they want me to think that I had control, so I'm going to tell them what they want to hear. This is something that we call, like, a desirability. Is it desirable? I forget the exact name for it for some reason, but it's like, sometimes participants will tell you what they think you want to hear rather than what they actually think, and I think that's kind of a concern. Some people get wise to the railroading common in interactive fiction games. Yeah. So it's possible that there's that as well. The manipulation check did show that they thought they had control, or at least that participants said they thought they had control. But of course, you know, again, it's possible that they were lying, either to make the researchers feel better or whatever. I usually go into games media with the understanding that there's a particular story the author wants to tell. Yeah, and you got to go in like, and the majority of their sample was gamers, right? So they probably already had some understanding that there are limits to how much you can influence the story. Like, it's like in a visual novel, there's only so many routes, that there's not an infinite number of possible outcomes, right? Like, you can nudge yourself down different routes, but there's only a set pool of potential endings that you can pick from. You don't have complete freedom, because that would be very difficult to make a game like that. Kind of cute that they think there's a participant didn't want the researchers to feel bad about their video games choices. Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible, and we know that this is a thing that happens where participants do, on occasion, like, change their responses, change how they act, change what they say, because they think that's what the researcher wants to hear, which is kind of cute, but also it's bad for getting accurate results. The ending where you trip down a manhole in the first minute and the credits immediately roll. Love that kind of thing. Bonus points if there's a cut off 2-frame screen. I love that stuff. Make it the Wilhelm scream, and then you get, like, total bonus points. It's so important. Just wanted to be happy about their game. Tyler! What? I think the validity of their study probably matters more to them than whether people liked their game in this particular case. If this was like a Steam review, I'm okay with them lying to make the reviewers feel, the game developers feel better. But because this is a research study, I'm not so sure. Another issue is the question of whether the findings are also valid for other media types. While interactive fiction is considered well-suited for studying the link between interactivity and identification, findings based on interactive fiction research may not be completely comparable to video games. I agree. I think video games are more immersive. Probably, yeah, the visual richness and action dynamics of video games usually exceed those of interactive fiction by far. Not surprising given that from what y'all said, and kind of from what they describe here, there are no visuals typically, or very limited visuals in interaction fiction. Video games entail not only choosing, designing, and customizing one's avatar. What they keep insisting on this, and while that is true of some video games, not all video games let you do that. You know, like some video games do, but not all. And then for some video games like Minecraft or something, you can customize your avatar, but there's kind of like a higher barrier to entry to customizing your avatar. Kinda. They're making it easier and easier these days, but still, it's harder to do that. I think I actually saw somebody present a study once about customizing Minecraft avatars. I'll have to see if I can hunt that down again. Anyway, you didn't create your own Mario at the start of the game, right? And what counts as customization? Like, if I'm playing Super Smash Brothers, does using the ultimate color scheme count as customization? Or like a fighting game, by using the alternate color scheme palettes, does that work? Is that customization? In Minecraft, the other first-person games, you don't see your avatar 99% of the time. Also true. Also true. Another issue is the question of whether the... yeah, we already read that. The video games entail not... but they also rely on perceiving the three-dimensional environment. Not all video games are three-dimensional, though, like platformers and side-scrollers. That's still more information than an interactive fiction game would give you, though. From a first-person perspective, again, they're talking only about, I don't know, and willfully steered act. I mean, I guess they're kind of using the most extreme immersive video game. Like, they could go straight up VR if they want to use the most extreme case of how video games are more immersive than interactive fiction. They categorize interactive fiction separately from video games. Yeah, they do, which is interesting. Keeps coming back to people apparently have never played Mario. I'm sure they have. I think they're just probably thinking of a very specific genre of video games as they type this, and I don't know. They seem to have a very specific object in mind when using the word video game. I agree. I agree. I think they have a very, very specific type of video game in mind when they use that term, and it's actually a lot broader than the way that they're using it. Whether that's actually a problem or not for this paper, I don't think that's necessarily a problem for the paper, but it does kind of bug me. It's kind of getting on my nerves. Anyway. Here the concept of agency seems to be of relevance. It describes the sense of being able to being the cause of the media character's actions. So, as such, agency also has been associated with the experience of embodiment, which, in a basic sense of the concept, may be described as having control over the body of the video game character. Hence, in contrast to interactive fiction, where interactivity mainly relies on deciding about the direction of the plot, in video games, interactivity may entail a more multifaceted concept. As stated by Burke et al., while traditional narratives rely on empathy, the viewer's identification with the emotions of a character, interactive computer games emphasize agency, the direct control of a character over the behavior and development of the character. Direct control of the player over the, yeah. So they're distinguishing between immersion as empathy, and, well, identification as empathy, and identification as this is simply this avatar, this character is simply an extension of my will. Maybe. I feel like I'm oversimplifying that, especially because of how they described the directionality of identification with a character in the introduction. I don't know. I've been going for nearly 3 hours now. My brain's kind of fried. In this sense, media with differing levels of interactivity and action options may tap into substantially different aspects of identification. That makes sense. While interactive fiction may prompt empathizing with a character, feeling with the character, video games may lead to a shift of self-perception and impression of becoming the character. That's, so like when they defined identification in the introduction, they were talking more about becoming the character, which is interesting because they framed the introduction identification as becoming the character, but they're arguing that the manipulation that they used is more about empathizing with the character, which is, I don't know, that's weird to me that they would change that. I don't know. You can tell, like, I feel like you can tell that the introduction of the paper and the discussion of the paper were written at very different time points. Like, probably, maybe even months apart. Or maybe it was different authors, I don't know. It's many possibilities. Because it seems like there's some friction between the ideas in the introduction and the ideas as they're presented in the discussion. I guess sometimes when I feel particularly disassociative, I consider myself to be an empty character for an observer to perceive the narrative of the world through. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I totally get what you mean, Marlon. So the meanings of words aren't consistent even within a single paper. Yeah. Yeah, now that you pointed out, Torg, that is kind of happening here. They're complaining about how words are used differently across different papers, but here they're using the word, like, identification differently within the same paper, which is concerning, especially because they say that that's a problem. It's like, well, that's concerning. I wonder if different authors wrote different sections of the paper, and those different authors also have different conceptualizations of these constructs, which is concerning. I think it's kind of like really demonstrating the problem that they're talking about, but maybe not in a way that they might have wanted to. It's also possible I'm just misunderstanding or misremembering something. I don't want to, like, say that this is all on them. It could be a me problem, especially because, like I said, my brain is dying. I'm getting pretty tired. In our study, the experience of being transported to the narrative significantly predicted identification with the story's main character, adding sustenance to sustenance. I love that, to past findings. An open issue, however, is the type of narrative news. Generally, it is assumed that the quality of the text of the story's genre may impact it. Yeah, I was wondering about this. Like, who did they get to write the story? Accordingly, an exciting storyline and emotionally engaging content, like in adventure novels or horror stories, is expected to be more transporting than a mundane story with little excitement or emotional relevance. So genre, essentially, should... Both the quality of the storytelling and the genre of the story should be expected to influence narrative transportation and therefore identification. Is there a link to the game? Yeah, I'm wondering that. Is there a link to the game? I want to know. Maybe I should try and look for that. Accordingly, an exciting storyline... we developed a murder story within which the participants were assumed the role of detective. While a detective narrative is expected to be engaging, it cannot be ruled out that the quality of the writing may lead to different cognitive and emotional yet. I want to know who did the writing. Who did the writing? I skimmed through the references and couldn't find it. They probably wouldn't have it in the references because it's not a separate... I believe they created the game for this study, so they're not citing a pre-existing game made by other people. It would be more in the methods and the measures section if they link it in the main paper, or it would be in the supplemental material on OSF. We developed a murder story. Apart from narrative content, the type of medium may also be of interest. May also be of essence for the experience of transportation. In contrast to, for instance, video games, texts are thought to rely on more imaginative investment from the recipient. By implication, those individuals who have a lighter likelihood of becoming cognitively and emotionally immersed in media are also expected to experience more transportation when reading a story. I wish they'd given us a correlation matrix so we could see how related those two things were. I think they kind of implied when they were talking about the pre-checks that I'm guessing this correlation of 0.34 was between immersion and narrative transportation, or immersive tendencies and narrative transportation, but they don't state that outright. And I would have loved to know that. By implication, those individuals who have a higher likelihood of becoming cognitively and emotionally immersed in media are also expected to experience more transportation when reading a story. You don't have to say by implication. You could have tested that with your data, and I think you did test that when you were checking the assumptions for your regression. You just didn't tell us directly if they were related. As such, an individual's immersive tendency is regarded as highly predictive of narrative transportation. Is it highly predictive, though? Because if I'm reading this right, and if I'm guessing right, it was only a correlation of 0.34, which isn't... I would not call that highly predictive. I don't know. Thus, also for identifying with the narrative's character. The current experiment was able to confirm this by showing that individuals with higher immersive tendencies also reported more identification with the detective. However, it must be noted that among the predictors included the multiple regression, the factual immersion, aka the narrative transportation, was a stronger predictor of identification. The predisposition, honestly, pretty weak predictor. But that could be because they also had narrative transportation in there, and that was sucking up all of the variance. They would have to do like a mediation model, I think. Like the mediation would be like you have tendency, so like the ITQ, the tendency to become immersed, predicts identification with the main character through narrative transportation. They would have to test that to see if that's going on. The only thing in the article vaguely related is the data availability statement, which just says you may ask the researchers. Rude! Rude! I thought that they said that they put the data on OSF. They put the aggregate data on OSF. I'll have to look. In future studies, the effect of immersive tendencies or transportation should be examined alone, alongside controlling for confounding influence of the narrative's interactivity, content, and quality. Oh, the data is there, but not the interactive fiction thing. Oh, that's a bummer. Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, so you have to ask the researchers to access the game. I see, I see. And the game is also in German, though. The game's in German. Do any of us speak German? Because I don't speak German. Do any of us know enough German to judge the quality of a story written in German? Nep does. Oh, we should pull Nep into this. Oh, Marlin as well. Oh, we can do it. We can figure it out. Maybe it is worth asking the authors. This paper is 3 years old, though. I have secondary school GCSE 7. Hey. I'm too American to fully comprehend what that means, but that sounds impressive. I know all the German that shows up in the average American World War II movie. Hey, that's something. Oh gosh, Tyler, please. In the face of limited data, demographic variables were also included in the regression model. However, age did not emerge as a significant predictor of identification. I wish you had kept it continuous, but whatever. Broad age range of our sample. The non-significant finding implies the identification may occur independent of a user's age. A confounding factor, however, may be... See, if you had just given us the mean and standard deviation, we would... I have feelings. I have feelings. I don't know if this is... I don't think this is a legitimate critique of their research, just I have very strong feelings about taking continuous variables and splitting them into categories when you could have just kept them continuous. I have strong feelings about this. Like, telling us the range is not super informative, because it could be that, like, 99% of their sample was between 15 and 25. And they only had one 65-year-old, but it makes it look like they have a big range because they use the range instead of the standard deviation. And, like, I have feelings. But to conclude the demographic similarity had no impact on identification is not feasible considering our study design. Fair. Contrary to age, gender predicted identification with the story's main character. Given that this predictor is barely significant, it is difficult to make reliable statements about which gender had which effect. Something p-values. We just can't learn secondary languages for some reason. It's a real shame. English one? Oh, that's a shame. I struggle with learning a second language as well, though. Like, I learned a lot of Spanish, or I studied Spanish for many years, and I do not remember a word of it. I started studying Japanese, and I remember a decent amount of Japanese, but it has kicked all the Spanish out of my brain. I don't think it's possible for my brain to hold more than 2 languages at once, which sucks. Furthermore, we include character gender and interaction of character gender and participant gender in the regression model. The model remained significant, but gender lost its significant impact, which was weak to begin with, probably because adding the interaction and the character gender reduced your statistical power. I believe official policy is that learning secondary languages is for people who don't yet speak English. Oh, pain. I want to learn more languages. I do. I need to work harder. Therefore, we cannot confirm Cook's finding that females identify more strongly with their own gender, while males identify with both gender. I think that could be a statistical power issue. It could also just be that maybe Hooks was a type 1 error. It could also be like maybe the medium matters for whether you identify with your gender. Maybe the game matters, whatever. I don't know. In some, more research is needed to add further sustenance. I like how they use the word sustenance for this. I've never seen sustenance used that way, but it's fun. Of whether gender influences identification, studies should strive for a 50-50 gender ratio. Oh yeah, that was another problem. They had like more than 70% of their sample was women. Studied as well as control for perceived demographic similarity in media characters. The strength of the current research lies in the use of widely applied comprehensive measures for assessing key variables, as well as closely adhering to theoretical models of media interactivity and identification. Furthermore, we followed the recommendation to use interactive fiction as a means of studying set associations because this reduces the risk of confounds. We included gender and age as possible predictors. As such, we were able to fill a gap in the body of data. However, there are several limitations. There always are. In accordance with Sherrick et al., the story's main character was assigned to participants. Hence, they could not choose between male or female detective, let alone customize him or her. Customization, however, is assumed to potentially impact whether and to what extent users identify with a fictional character and should be regarded in future research. Yeah, that was just beyond the scope of this study, I would say. Further, we use a cross-sectional design, yet there is evidence that time may be of essence. For example, Lynn reported that although their participants empathized with a video game character, the duration of the gameplay did not seem to be long enough to evoke more than emotional empathy. In support of this, so there's different types of empathy. There's emotional empathy, which is feeling somebody else's emotions. There's cognitive empathy, which is somebody else's thoughts. And there's like one other type that I forget the name of right now. I'm sorry. Found that identification intensified from longer gaming time. That makes sense. The more time you spend with the characters, the more you identify them. Maybe because you have more information about them. Who knows? A certain level of investment is required to immerse oneself, I think. I agree. The drawback of speaking the lingua franca, the boon, is that we stole the role of lingua franca from the Franks. Oh, no. Longitudinal designs are needed to shed more light on this issue, so they want to do studies over time to see if this changes over time or if the amount of time you play matters. That makes sense. Furthermore, we use static pictures to depict the detective. If other interactive fiction studies resorted to animated pictures or did not use any illustrated materials at all, although we pre-evaluated the pictures to ensure they were comparable across genders and did not elicit any negative responses, completely dropping them could have had a different effect on identification. Yeah, that's possible. In general, many interactive narratives are devoid of rich character description found in traditional narratives. As such, they leave more space for the reader's imagination. And I would argue that potentially that might have similar effects to very, very high customization. Because in both cases, if you have very high customization for the player character, then you can make them look almost however you want. But also, if you leave no description of the player character, again, in your head, you can make them look like whatever you want them to. Yet, whether this lack of concrete character information facilitates putting the recipient in the shoes of the character remains to be answered. Yeah, they don't have data on that. Fair. Also, the type of recruitment we chose for the current study and the resulting sample may be regarded as a limitation, given that interactive fiction may be used to foster education and health, appropriate target groups. So people that you would actually want to use interactive fiction to help with education with would probably be a better sample if that's your end goal. In order to increase experimental control, we used a purportedly interactive study. Our active condition included real active choices, but in fact the story content ending were the same in the passive reading only condition. I'm increasingly convinced that the choices didn't actually change anything, that everybody got exactly the same story, all the scenes, all the interactions were exactly the same. The choices didn't actually do anything. However, while the medium was factually interactive in that you could make choices, the possibility remains that users may not have perceived it as such. So the user said they thought it was interactive, but again, they could be lying to us. Or maybe even like they thought it was consciously interactive, but some subconscious part of them was like, this feels a little weird. Or maybe they had a suspicion, but they didn't feel they had enough evidence to say it wasn't interactive, whatever. Although a small pre-study confirmed the success of the manipulation, more in-depth is, oh wait, did they only do the manipulation check during the pilot test, which only had like 10 people in it? I would have liked to see them do the manipulation check in the actual study as well, if so. We did get an example of a choice earlier. It looks like they would have pick which scene you read first. Oh, Torg, actually, you know what? That makes sense, and I think that's probably a good way to do it. Does it introduce confounds? Yes, it could potentially introduce order effects, but that's not nearly as bad as like literally changing the content they see. That's a good thought. We should design a study together sometime, all of us, me and chat, like, because y'all have some really interesting and cool ideas for how to keep things controlled while still like having I don't know. Y'all have great ideas. I love it. It was like examine the body or question the wife. Yeah. I tend to see through that in terms of like actually controlling the output of the story. Yeah. So, but I do think Torg's suggestion of like just changing, you get to decide the order in which you see things, but not necessarily where the story goes, is kind of a good compromise there, if that makes sense. Because your actions do affect what you see and when, but so like your input does lead to a different output, but at the end of the day, you're still getting all of the same information. Hence, the main challenge of upcoming research in the context of interactive fiction will be to simultaneously regard a range of key factors in the study of character identification, like customization versus assignment of characters, similarity versus differences, and presence versus absence of pictures. I don't want to take too much credit for this. It was in the paper like an hour ago. Well, like, I didn't interpret it that way, Torg. Like, that's not how I was seeing it. I think your interpretation, because they didn't outright state that, I don't think. Which is why I've been confused about this the whole time. They didn't outright state it that way, so that interpretation of it, I think, or that idea of how they might have done it, was really sharp. Though I guess sometimes games let you only investigate so many things that becomes a choice in terms of, like, this playthrough, you get a limited slice of the story. Yeah, that too. Although the pre-story... oh, that was the end. We finished it. We finished the paper. We did it. I was genuinely not expecting to finish this paper today, but we finished the paper. All right, interesting paper. I do have some questions that I would have liked answered. I had some questions about the methods. I had some questions about the conceptualization. I do think that they could have written things a bit clearer in some ways, though again, like these are authors writing in their second language, which is going to make it more difficult to communicate clearly. Fast like bunny? Yeah. But I think this was a really cool paper. I do think I learned a lot from it. I think it was pretty neat. What did y'all think? Did y'all like the paper? Do we feel like we learned something? Yeah, bunny, hair. Yeah, hooray. It was interesting. Yeah, I think it was really interesting. Really interesting. Very interesting statistics choices. Yeah, I think that their choices for the main analysis make sense. And I do think that they did only have a sample size of like 200 some, which is not a lot of statistical power. And I would have liked to see them test for the interactions, but also if they had added the interactions in, they would have had even less statistical power. So that might have, I think that's a justifiable choice. What really confuses me is using ANOVAs to compare two conditions instead of t-tests. That's the one where I can't think of a justification. I do wonder about like the quality of the interactive fiction thing they put together. Yeah, me too. I am very curious about that. I would like, let us play the game, right? Right? Yeah, I would love to play the game. It's very interesting, but I've read 13 episodes of the estate developer, so I may not have paid attention. Fair. Let's see. Where's the OSF link? I'm gonna go to their OSF page and see if they link us to the game. They have the data file. Oh, it's not even the data. It's just a breakdown of demographics. I mean, I guess they did say aggregate data. Oh, regression factors. So they give us the mean and standard deviation of all the variables by their predictor variables. Let's look at the wiki overview. There's the description. Files, metadata. Are there any registrations in here? Analytics. Linked service. Yeah, no, they don't. Yeah, I can't find a place where they would have the game. That's a bummer. That's a bummer. You might be able to email them and ask them. But I was wrong. This paper isn't from 2023. It's from 2022. This is a 4-year-old paper. But Yeah, I think the bucktooth in the eyes, but yeah, I feel very mischievous when I use this model. I feel a little gremlin-y. Anyway, I think it's probably about time I got dinner, and this has been a long stream by my standards, so I think it's probably time for me to go. I need to send that email to that researcher that I'm going to invite on the channel. That will probably be on a Thursday or a Friday based on my and his schedules. But I'll keep y'all posted. I'll let you know how that goes. Hopefully I can get him on. I'm not sure I learned anything I didn't intuitively get from spending 60% of my waking hours playing video games, but I also know that's a cognitive bias, so what do I know? I get you, Torg. I get you, Torg. Send email to get the game. I'm not gonna do that, personally. If you want to do it, you can do that. I'm not gonna do that. Enjoy a big delicious salad or carrot. Maybe jackalopes eat other things. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what jackalopes eat. I don't know. Either way, I'm gonna go eat something. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody, and I will see you next Thursday when I have no idea what we're gonna be reading, but we're gonna be reading something. Yeah. All right. Okay. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you for coming. Bye.